2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the palatial yet not overly ostentatious studios of CBS Sports Radio here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to a Monday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all the great local CBS Sports Radio affiliates, Sirius XM, channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/CBS Sports Radio. 855-212-4CBS, number to jump on in, 855-212-4227. And you could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter, at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. We got Evan Washburn, CBS Sports NFL reporter. He's going to stop by at the top of the hour at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. But the chaos has already started to go down, because at noon Eastern time earlier today, the legal tampering window did open in the NFL, and all these deals can become official on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern when the new league year does start. But there are 5 pretty large-sized moves right out of the gate to kick off this basically new NFL season. The Russell Wilson domino did fall last night. Veteran minimum going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kirk Cousins just breaking a few moments ago a 4-year, $180 million deal. $100 million is guaranteed per Adam Schefter. He is going to Atlanta Falcons. In the running back world, we have already seen movement with Saquon Barkley going down the turnpike as he's going to land in Philadelphia. It's a 3-year, $37.5 million deal that could be worth up to $47 million. 26 of it will be fully guaranteed. We don't have the details of the Josh Jacobs deal just quite yet, but Aaron Jones is entering the final year of his contract. Now Josh Jacobs will join him in that backfield along with Jordan Love, as Josh Jacobs is going from the Raiders to the go, Pack, go. And even though that probably puts Stu down in the dumps, Stu, I do have some good news for you. Christian Wilkins, the big fella from Miami, going from the Dolphins to the Raiders, going to team up next to Max Crosby. You'll see Max Crosby's numbers just go through the roof, even more so than where they currently at, as they do land the interior defensive lineman, the Raiders, that is, in Christian Wilkins. 4 years, $110 million is the contract. 84.75 is guaranteed. All righty, let's start with the quarterbacks because they're the sexiest. So you do have Kirk Cousins landing in Atlanta. You do have Russell Wilson landing with the Steelers. I think the better move is the Atlanta Falcons getting Kirk Cousins. Now, there is a great separation, and it further shows this, from the level of quarterback play in the AFC, where there is a lot of depth, to the NFC, where there is not much depth. And that factors into this conversation because there is some concern about Kirk Cousins giving him all that money that they just did. And he turns 36 in August, and he's coming off an Achilles injury. But you look at who is more likely to make the playoffs this year, there's no doubt about it, it's the Atlanta Falcons over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because just for starters, the Falcons getting Kirk Cousins, to me, makes them the team to beat in the NFC South. I look at the rest of that NFC South. It's not the Saints. I can never rely on Derek Carr. If you can't win that division last year, you're not going to win it this year. We know the Panthers are nowhere close to competing. And then you do get Baker Mayfield landing back in Tampa Bay. You do get Mike Evans landing back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I just think the Falcons are more attractive entering this season. And they were close to Tampa Bay last year. And they had the wrong coach in place in Arthur Smith, who was tabbed as an offensive mind for what he did at Tennessee, but he had really good resources in Atlanta, and he just didn't use them the right way. Like, I go back to last year with the Atlanta Falcons. They tried to make Desmond Ridder a franchise quarterback, where the entire league knew that at best, Desmond Ridder would be a game manager. So that meant they took away carries from Bijan Robinson. They took away carries from Tyler Algier. They didn't use Kyle Pitts the right way. So now bringing in a new coach, who I understand Raheem Morris is a defensive-minded coach and Zach Robinson's going to be the OC, I think just for starters, bare minimum, that gets the Atlanta Falcons 2 more victories. Now you bring in Kirk Cousins, you go from a below-average quarterback to say what you want about Kirk Cousins because he's very polarizing. Kirk Cousins, bare minimum, is a good quarterback in the NFL. And you put Kirk Cousins in this division, they should win this division. They should be a playoff team. Now, the question becomes, what can their apex be? And I think if everything hits, the Atlanta Falcons in an NFC that there's a lot of questions about, they could be in an NFC title game this year. I don't think that's crazy to say whatsoever at their absolute apex. You have a young defense and a young secondary that I think is criminally underrated. On offense, you have a good O-line. You have Kyle Pitts, who I think is going to go back to being year one Kyle Pitts under a new offensive mind. Then you look at that backfield. Even if Kirk has some adjustment coming off the Achilles, you could hand the ball off to an explosive weapon in Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, which all he's done since being in the NFL for 2 seasons has exceeded expectations. And you have Drake London. That's a team to me that they kind of fit their quarterback, where they're a good team. I don't think anyone's going to be sitting here saying the Falcons are great, the Falcons are elite. But in the NFC, good could get you a long ways. And it could go a long ways. Because in the AFC, like, look at what the Steelers just did. First and foremost, I applaud the Steelers. I said back in December That was the first team I mentioned when you found out that Russell Wilson got benched. I said Russell Wilson should be a Pittsburgh Steeler. Now, I knew Russ and his camp wanted to go to Pittsburgh. What I didn't know and I was extremely skeptical about was, would the Steelers be interested? And would they show legitimate interest, or would you just bring in Russell Wilson for a meeting to kind of send a message to Kenny Pickett and really try to wake Kenny Pickett up, who you just used a first-round draft pick on 2 drafts ago? Well, now we know that Russell Wilson's going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And let's not beat around the bush here. You could lock this up. As long as Russell Wilson is healthy, he will 1,000, and I mean 1,000%, be their starting quarterback. I talked to a source last night to try to see what Russ was promised or what Russ was told going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that source told me that Russell Wilson is going to get the QB1 reps, and Russell Wilson will be the starter come week 1. So Mike Tomlin could dress this up that it's going to be a competition and give you all that football coaches speak, that football coaches bull junk. We all know Kenny Pickett's not starting week 1 as long as Russell Wilson is healthy. And Russ is a good quarterback still. He's not the Russell Wilson that we thought was going to be a Hall of Famer. He's not the Russell Wilson that looked like he was great in Seattle and was starting to garner MVP attention and consideration. Like the last 2 years, it has not been good. You know, there's the hot take of the day. It has not been good for Russell Wilson with the Denver Broncos. Year 1 was a disaster. And I've never seen a quarterback fall that quickly from where his stock was, what the contract was that the team gave him, how many picks they gave up. And year number 1 was brutal. But in year number 2, he did win some people back. Now, you're not going to get a Russ that is a great quarterback. You're not going to get a Russ that is a franchise quarterback, but on a 1-year deal worth $1.2 million, it's an absolute steal. Because just for starters, you, in a huge way, drastically improve the quarterback room that you had last year. Like, it was so bad for Kenny Pickett at times last year with the Steelers that when Mason Rudolph looked competent at the end of the season and started to win games, people just all of a sudden forgot about Kenny Pickett. So Kenny Pickett's going to be a backup. Kenny Pickett, in all likelihood, is not a starting quarterback in this league. And you bring in Russ, that all he has to do is manage the game. You have a Russ now that kind of goes back to where he was in Seattle with the Steelers. The Steelers are a defensive-minded team first. The Seahawks, when they won, they were a defensive-minded team first with the Legion of Boom. You have a Hall of Fame coach or a great coach like you had in Pete Carroll, and now what you have with Mike Tomlin. And on offense, you got 2 pretty solid wide receivers who now I don't think will kill one another anymore since they have a competent quarterback in the room. And you have a run game that's solid with Najee Harris and then also Jaylen Warren. But the problem with the Steelers and the problem with the AFC, there's too many great or very good quarterbacks. Like, if Russell Wilson signed with the Falcons and it was Kirk Cousins signing with the Steelers, I still think Kirk is the better player entering 2024, but the better move would probably have been whoever signed with the Atlanta Falcons. And that's why my answer is Kirk signing with the Atlanta Falcons, because there's an easier road to be a playoff team by winning that NFC South, and then also being a contender, determining how legitimate you kind of look at the contending conversation in the NFC. But in the AFC right now, the 2 best teams by far and away are the Kansas City Chiefs and then the Cincinnati Bengals. So let's just look at that division with the Steelers for starters. The 2 best teams in that division right now entering the season, on paper, it's the Bengals and then it's the Ravens. And then the Browns and the Steelers, they could jump up to maybe the 2nd best team in the AFC North, but they're fighting right now for the 3rd and the 4th spot unless you have a Lamar Jackson injury or a Joe Burrow injury, which we've seen a bunch of those throughout the last few years. But in that pecking order right now, it's Bengals 1 in the AFC North, Ravens 2, and then I would probably still give the slight edge to the Cleveland Browns after getting Jerry Jeudy this past weekend for nothing over the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it's splitting hairs there. So the road in the NFC South and the road in the NFC is easier in the AFC. and you look at who's the three best teams in the AFC compared to the three best teams in the NFC, well, in the AFC, it's the Kansas City Chiefs, it's the Cincinnati Bengals, and then you have an open discussion for the third spot. In the NFC, it's San Francisco. I think you still have to give the edge to the Detroit Lions as a second team, but after that, this thing is wide open. Like the Eagles, I have questions about them. The Cowboys, I have questions about them. The Rams are a good team, and I think are getting disrespected. And you look inside the NFC North, you got to give consideration to the Green Bay Packers. But if I ask that question, who are the three best teams in the NFC compared to the three best teams in the AFC? The AFC will give you probably easier answers and quicker answers because the first two spots are without a doubt unquestioned. And I still think most people would still put the Buffalo Bills, even with all their changes, in at number 3. But in the NFC, after the 49ers, you could probably give me whoever you want 2 and 3. And I don't think it's far-fetched to say that the Falcons, on paper, and taking advantage of that division, could end up being the third best team come playoff time in the NFC. But Russ with the Steelers, I don't care what they do, they will never be viewed as the third best team in the AFC. You have a lot of great young quarterbacks in the AFC. In the NFC, this thing is so wide open. Like Jalen Hurts was the guy for a year, then took a step back. Dak Prescott, he's just considered a good quarterback. You know, Jordan Love, up and coming. Jared Goff, very good. But no one will call him great. You know, Brock Purdy, he has his detractors. But you know Brock Purdy just got to a Super Bowl with the San Francisco 49ers. Matthew Stafford getting up in age, but had a big redemption season. So there's such a disparity between the AFC and the NFC. And I look at these two moves where the Falcons, probably on paper, are not a better team than the Steelers, but it's not by much that the Steelers are that much better than the Atlanta Falcons, but the better landing spot and the better move and the better team that's in position to succeed in the 2024 NFL season, yeah, it's Kirk Cousins with the Atlanta Falcons over Russell Wilson with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because even at best, even if the Steelers really hum with Russell Wilson, where's the farthest they're going? Probably a wild card round. Like even if they win the division, which I don't think will happen, they're not getting a bye in the AFC. And the max I could see Russell Wilson, if everything goes right in Pittsburgh, the max I could see him doing in year one is winning a playoff game. In the NFC, with Kirk Cousins, they should win the NFC South. They should win a home playoff game. And I don't think it's that far-fetched with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of moving pieces in the NFC to say that the Falcons will be in the divisional round and they could win that game and be playing in the NFC title game. But that's the farthest or the furthest I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons. Like, neither of these teams are we sitting here saying, okay, Super Bowl, here we go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Or Super Bowl, rise up with the Dirty Birds in Atlanta. Like, that's just not going to happen. So what's the better move? Russell Wilson going to the Pittsburgh Steelers or Kirk Cousins going to the Atlanta Falcons? 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. When we come on back, Saquon Barkley landing in Philadelphia. The Raiders losing Josh Jacobs, but signing Christian Wilkins. How are we kind of viewing the Eagles, the Packers, and the Raiders with day one of the legal tampering window underway in the NFL? Coming on back, Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
The Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio. Here's Zach Gelb.
More running back news. We already know Tony Pollard is leaving the Cowboys to go to Tennessee. Josh Jacobs has said goodbye to Stuart Kovacs and said, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you, as he's off to the Green Bay Packers. And you have Saquon Barkley saying goodbye to the Giants and hello to the Eagles. If you recall, the Packers last year, when you had the uncertainty regarding the contract situation with Jonathan Taylor before he inked that lucrative extension in the middle of the seaon with the Indianapolis Colts, and you had the holdout and you had all the contentious relationship where Jim Irsay brought him on to the RV. It was all weird. There was a time where it was reported that the Packers displayed some interest in getting Josh Jacobs, and that was a year ago in the fall, or in Jonathan Taylor, and that was a year ago in the fall where people were like, wait. You're trying to go get Jonathan Taylor when you already have Aaron Jones on the roster and A.J. Dillon. And it was like, the running back market, though, is supposed to be decreasing, and you're trying to go add basically 2 really good running backs and then another solid depth piece that you already had on the roster. Well, now a year later, things have changed because A.J. Dillon's a free agent, and now you bring in Josh Jacobs, but that comes at the expense of the breaking news that we just found out moments ago, is that the Green Bay Packers have failed to reach a restructure of a contract with Aaron Jones, who had 1 year left on his deal, and now Aaron Jones is going to hit free agency. So the Green Bay Packers have now said goodbye to Aaron Jones, according to Adam Schefter. Have reached an agreement today with free agent running back Josh Jacobs. The Packers informed running back Aaron Jones that he is being released per a source. Jones now will be a free agent. I don't know about you, Samter. I am surprised out of all the positions that the running back position, from where the conversation has been the last 2-3 years, has been this active today. Now, I have not seen the numbers yet on Josh Jacobs. I have not seen the numbers yet on Tony Pollard, but we've seen the numbers on Saquon Barkley. And I think we could learn something with the numbers on Saquon Barkley, who gets a 3-year, $37.5 million deal that could be worth up to $46.75 million and 26 fully guaranteed. Saquon Barkley actually made a smart approach here, where a year ago, he took the franchise tag and then it got renegotiated a little bit. But he basically got his $10, $11 million, $12 million for one season. And then the following year, he basically deferred that and waited. And he was available. The Eagles wanted him. And this Eagles deal is fair for both sides. Because I don't care what the total money is. It could be worth up to 46.75, and right now it's 3 for 37.5. The fully guaranteed is the big number. And that's at $26 million. And that was kind of right in the ballpark, anywhere from 22 to 28 last year, that we were talking about what would have had to got done and what would have had to have been given for the Giants to get a deal done with Saquon Barkley last offseason. So maybe this is the start of the approach from other running backs. Yes, if you could get Jonathan Taylor money, if you get Christian McCaffrey money and things like that, you take that money, or Nick Chubb money, you take that when you could get it. But if the market's really not that much in your favor and you've reached the end of your contract, it's not the worst thing for a running back to go cash in for a year on a franchise tag, and maybe you could sweeten it with some incentives and you get a little bit more than what the franchise tag was, and then the next year you just wait to pretty much get what you would have got the year before anyway. So I kind of like the approach by Saquon. And in this process too, and I have a lot of respect for the Giants. I like Joe Shane. But since they couldn't get the deal done, I just read a report during the break, the Giants didn't even get a chance to make an offer. Now, you could say you had enough time to go make an offer if you wanted to. But I don't blame Saquon whatsoever in the way that he played this. And I actually think he played it masterfully, because he got the money last year. Then he gets his fully guaranteed that he probably would have got last year just a year later after making, an additional $10 or $12 million. And then, boom, you stick it to the Giants in the process by going down the turnpike to Philadelphia. And say what you want about the uncertainties and the ambiguity regarding the future of Philadelphia, but the Eagles right now are on that short list of teams in the NFC that you consider a Super Bowl contender. And now you get to play with Jalen Hurts, upgrade over Daniel Jones. There's upgrades at the wide receiver position on that roster easily. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, both would easily be the number one wide receiver for the New York Giants. And then even without Jason Kelce, that Eagles offensive line is still 10 times better than what the Giants have to offer. And you have an offense that has done a spectacular job running the football. And now you add Saquon Barkley and you line him up in the red zone next to Jalen Hurts with Dallas Goedert as a tight end and the other weapons that we mentioned, yeah, have fun trying to stop that Eagles offense as long as everybody could stay healthy. And that's the big thing. Saquon needs to stay healthy. But the Eagles improved their team today. I know we saw DeAndre Swift land in Chicago. He was a good one-year player, gets to go back home, played for the Eagles, and now he's off to Chicago, and he got some money. But the Eagles today have improved their team, and this is the first time really since the season ended that there's been something positive with the Philadelphia Eagles. So, Samter, I commend Saquon with what he's done, and not only that, I'm surprised how many running backs are off the board, and I think it's running backs just kind of being more understanding of what the market is for them now and being fairer with after basically seeing the last 2 years them get shut out for the most part as a unit as a whole. To see this many running backs going right now without knowing the details of all these deals, I think the running backs now have a better understanding and are more realistic with their place and where it is in the sport right now.
I agree. I think, honestly, this feels more exception than rule, though. This doesn't feel like this is going to happen.
You think it's a fad?
I think it's not even a fad. I think this is just specific to this year because there are like 6 or 7 legitimate Pro Bowl, All-Pro quality running backs available all at once. Mm-hmm. Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs. Now we have Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley. You got guy after guy
Derrick
after
Henry.
guy. I said Derrick Henry. There's so many guys who are available, right? Austin Eckler is like the worst of them, and Austin Eckler was a Pro Bowl, All-Pro caliber guy just 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's a lot of wear and tear in that body.
100%. So I think that this feels a little bit different just because we've seen so many guys that are out there, but it is going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see if they can parlay this into real money or if this is just kind of like a one-year thing because there's like 6 or 7 guys out there all at once. And, you know, I guess if the NFL colluded and just were like, we're just going to keep the market down, then so be it. But at the end of the day, if you have like 8 guys out there, supply and demand, there's just going to be a lot of teams going after a lot of guys.
So you have Tony Pollard landing in Tennessee. You have DeAndre Swift landing in Chicago. Saquon is off the board going to the Eagles, and the Raiders lose Josh Jacobs, and he goes to the Green Bay Packers. So now the 3 big names remaining, Aaron Jones, who because of the Jacobs deal becomes a free agent. He's released by the Packers. You have Derrick Henry, who's still on the board, and Samter just mentioned Austin Eckler. Out of those 3 guys, who do you think is most likely to land with the Baltimore Ravens? Because we just saw Jalen Hurts, right, who's a mobile quarterback, get Saquon Barkley. Lamar Jackson just had his second MVP season, but that team did jack in the playoffs. They won 1 game. They played 1 good half against the Texans, and then they failed to show up as an offense at home up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Out of those 3 running backs, Jones, Henry, Eckler, who winds up with the Baltimore Ravens? I'm going to stick with the prediction I made last week that it is Derrick Henry. But you can argue from a fit perspective, it may be better that Aaron Jones actually winds up with the Baltimore Ravens.
I think Eckler feels like the best option there. Like that's a RPO offense. I love Derrick Henry, but he's not an RPO kind of guy necessarily, right? You need a guy who can run on the edges, up the middle, catch the ball out of the backfield. He has to be a multiple threat. And I think the best of the multiple threats there is Eckler. Aaron Jones is great also. He could probably work there too. But there's guys like Gus Edwards is one of those same guys who could just like hand the ball off, go up the gut, and make get a few yards.
Yeah, but here's the problem with the Ravens. The Ravens have to stop settling. I feel like the Ravens are the one team that they go, okay, we have Lamar Jackson. We'll be fine. You know, I know that they've tried in the previous years to go get a number 1 wide receiver in the draft. It hasn't worked out with Rashad Bateman. I was encouraged year 1 with Zay Flowers. You know, Mark Andrews is a special tight end that I know he got hurt and then came back. I think you got to go get a little bit more firepower and not wait to bring in someone like Odell Beckham years after he's past his prime. Like, I would go get a little more firepower and ready to go firepower right now. And my one concern, and you know me, I love Austin Eckler. It comes on the show a bunch. I just don't know how much good football he has left. Like, I was alarmed with what we got to see from Austin Eckler this past year, where you did see a rapid decline. Now, they didn't treat him well contractually. The situation, the coaching staff was a mess with the Chargers anyway. I still know what Derrick Henry could be. It may not be a great fit, but I think you find a way to make it work with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. But if it came down to Aaron Jones or Austin Eckler, I just think Aaron Jones has more football left in the tank, and we've seen it more recently in his situation this past year in Green Bay compared to what Austin Eckler did with the Los Angeles Chargers. By the way, the Tony Pollard contract expected to be 3 years, $24 million. 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. Let's go to Braden in Georgia. First up on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Braden, what's happening? Go ahead, Braden.
Hi. So I think the Kirk Cousins deal is very good. I don't think Justin Fields would have been more worth it because that's what people are saying down here in Atlanta on 92.9.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they were just a quarterback away. So I do predict the Falcons to win the division this year. And I don't see Russell Wilson doing that great in Pittsburgh just because of the offensive line around him and like Pickett, and those quarterbacks have struggled. And on the running back core, it's running backs these days are just like a rinse and repeat kind of thing. Like they people say they're recycled so much, and the Chargers, I do believe Jim Harbaugh wanted Jacobs and Barkley, so he needs to tell whatever.
Well, Braden, thanks for the phone call. I get the point that you're making, how running backs are by committee now. And if you look at the last decade of Super Bowl champions, it has been running back by committee with the Patriots, with the Eagles, with the Kansas City Chiefs. I never expected the Chargers to go big name hunting for a running back because that team has a lot of holes. That team is in a salary cap position right now that is not favorable, and they have to trim so much of the fat as it is right now. So pretty much the way that I look at it is to go get a great running back and give money. I think it's an added luxury because there's been so many teams, and the teams that win, and I'm not saying that you don't want to have like a great running back. Yeah, it helps when you get a Christian McCaffrey. But the teams that win Super Bowls have done a great job in rotating 2 or 3 running backs and having those legs fresh. So I don't think you have to overpay at that position whatsoever. But then you have a team like the Eagles who their offense is pretty much set and you can make the finances work. Yeah, I don't fault them whatsoever for landing a player like a Saquon Barkley. All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We'll come on back. Sam's got a few questions. I got a few answers. We do the segment every Monday and Friday. It's called Onside Offside. Update time first. Here's the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
And it's sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Looking for a career path with flexibility and great pay and benefits? Go to progressive.com/careers and apply online today. The speculation has ended over Kirk Cousins' future. It will be in Atlanta. The veteran quarterback agrees to a 4-year deal, $180 million, and now leaves a big void in Minnesota. The Panthers are getting some protection for Bryce Young, signing lineman Robert Hunt away from the Dolphins. A reported 5-year deal worth a total of $100 million. $60 million is guaranteed. Saquon Barkley leaves the Giants but stays in the NFC East with a 3-year deal with the Eagles worth over $37 million and $26 million in guarantees. The Bears open free agency, signing DeAndre Swift away from the Eagles, 3 years, $24 million, while the Titans scooped up Tony Pollard with the same amount. The Packers got in on the fun, reportedly coming to terms with Josh Jacobs, and they're releasing longtime back Aaron Jones. The Texans lose 2 defenders to the Vikings. Pass rusher Jonathan Grenard gets a 4-year deal. Blake Cashman 3. Bryce Huff leaves the Jets for a 3-year deal with the Eagles. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Jim Rome here, coming up Tuesday in the Jungle, a conversation with newly retired Eagles icon Fletcher Cox. See you Tuesday, 12 noon Eastern and 9 Pacific.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break.
4 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. It's time to ask the pros, where you, the listener, gets to ask us a question, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Simply tweet your question at CBS Sports Radio or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag Ask the Pros. Be listening later in the show when we might answer your question. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. I'll get to onside, offside in just a second. 855-212-4CBS. 855-212-4227. Let me take Tony in Toronto, though, quickly first. Tony, what's happening? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'd like to talk about Russell Wilson. What a mistake by Pittsburgh. Like, you look at this. What is their desire? What do they want to do? With a coach like Tomlin, who's getting on in years, hasn't won a Super Bowl in a long time. Do you think taking in Wilson, you're going to win a Super Bowl this year? I don't think so.
But are you going to win one with Kenny Pickett?
I would say probably the same odds. So therefore, you did nothing.
The same odds? I don't see how you could say it's the same odds.
Well, I feel so strongly. This guy, Wilson, you've seen what he did in Seattle. He caused a disturbance there. He
won a
goes
Super Bowl.
into Denver. No, I'm talking about, don't go about past, way back. Let's talk about recent years. He was a distraction there.
Sure, you're not wrong on that.
He was a distraction in Denver. A lot of players talking the talk about him, saying he had his own office, his own entourage.
Yeah.
That's not the type of
Yeah, but a
guy
lot of players in Denver that, who cares what they say? There's not a lot of good players in that roster to begin with.
Well, all I'm saying is this. You know what they say, go fishing, cut bait, or whatnot, to the old adages. If you really want to move on. Maybe you need to do a real cleaning and whatever it is, Pittsburgh, especially maybe even for respect for Tomlin, like I said, who's been a very good coach, and he'd love to win another.
Yeah, but Tony, here's the thing. I don't get how this is a mistake. It's $1.2 million for a starting quarterback in this league. That's nothing.
No, I understand. Even if he came and he paid Pittsburgh, what I'm saying is you're not doing the fiduciary responsibility you have to the organization, for the club, for the fans, to put on what you think will be a step forward or multiple steps forward. Like if they had signed Cousins, I'd say yes, absolutely. They got something that could potentially, we could maybe even make it to a championship game or something. Not with Russell Wilson.
No, it is not it's not an unfair take by you. And I look at Russell Wilson. I think at best they make the playoffs and win one playoff game if everything, and I mean if everything goes right. But it's clear that this is a past year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're in a transition once again on the offensive side of the ball, where they know they don't have their franchise quarterback. You bring in Russ, and I think that does improve the football team. By how much, that's a different conversation. But this isn't breaking news to anyone. The Steelers used to have this Super Bowl or bust standard. We are long away from those days of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We have not gone into a season in a while, at least 5+ years, if not more than that, of saying the Pittsburgh Steelers are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. This is another year where you don't view them as a legitimate Super Bowl contender, but I can't fault them for improving that quarterback room because it's clear Kenny Pickett isn't that dude. Let's go to onside, offside. Stu, hit it.
Zach's taking on the most polarizing issues in sports. Which side of the line of scrimmage will he end up on?
Offside. Defense number 69.
It's Onsides, Offsides with Zach Gelb on CBS Sports Radio.
All righty, Sam, so what do we got cooking today?
Now to the Bengals placed a franchise tag on T. Higgins. The star wideout has reportedly requested a trade as the team has refused to sign a long-term deal with him. Onside, offside, the Bengals need to keep Higgins if they hope to win the Super Bowl.
For this season, yes, onside. I would keep T. Higgins for this year, and then you try to explore life after that season. You know he's not going to be there long-term, but I got Burrow coming back from the injury. You have Jamar Chase. Even if it could get a little ugly at times, I would keep T. Higgins. But if not, there's a bunch of teams that should be interested. The Green Bay Packers should be interested. The Houston Texans should be interested. The New York Jets should be interested. But right now, Cincinnati, do not trade him. Keep him for one more season. So I say on sides, the Bengals need to keep T. Higgins if they hope to win a Super Bowl.
Now, Chris Jones signed a monster extension to stay with the Chiefs, inking a 5-year, $158 million contract with $101 million guaranteed. The deal makes Jones the highest paid defensive lineman per year and has the fourth most guaranteed money at signing of any defensive lineman. Onside, offside, Chris Jones is a top 5 defensive lineman in the entire NFL.
Onsides. And I'll go as far to say this. As much as I love Aaron Donald, and Aaron Donald's one of the greatest defensive players to ever lace him up, and we know he's easily going to the Hall of Fame. I'm not saying Chris Jones had a better career, but right now, Chris Jones is a better player than Aaron Donald. Chris Jones is everything that you could ask, and he comes up in the big clutch moments as well. You remember the first Super Bowl the Chiefs won, he knocked that ball down at the line of scrimmage, and we know the pressure that he caused in this latest Super Bowl. Everything you want in a player, from the production on the field to clutch moments, and then also being a leader in that locker room. Chris Jones is check, check, check. So, yes, he's a top 5 defensive lineman in the NFL on sides.
Now, as expected, the Eagles' Fletcher Cox has announced his retirement, joining longtime teammate Jason Kelce in, I guess you can call unemployment. Cox was a 6-time Pro Bowler, but just once did he make an All-Pro team. Onside, offside, Fletcher Cox is a Hall of Famer.
So, interior defensive linemen like this are so tough to evaluate because their stats aren't always so gaudy. He did have 70 career sacks, and he's on the NFL 2010 All-Decade team. And you look back from that Eagles team that won the Super Bowl, for Hall of Famers, when you think of that group, Jason Kelce easily, Lane Johnson easily, and then it is probably Fletcher Cox. I don't think he'll get in on the first or second or third try, but he will eventually get in. But it's kind of crazy when you look back from a Super Bowl championship team, and the first 3 names that you think about to go to the Hall of Fame from that group are 2 offensive linemen and then a defensive lineman. I think it will take a little time, but yes, from what I've seen in the NFL, Fletcher Cox, to me, there was always a respect. You knew he's one of the better defensive linemen in the game, at times underappreciated nationally, but I do think he's a Hall of Famer on sides.
Now, after tagging receiver Michael Pittman, the Colts gave their star wideout a 3-year, $71 million deal with $46 million guaranteed. He had 109 catches for 1,100 yards last year and is averaging 98 catches and just under 1,100 yards the past 3 seasons. So onside, offside, Michael Pittman is a true number 1 wideout.
So when I say a true number 1 wideout, my definition is that you're a top 10 wide receiver in the league. And then after that, I think there's a conversation of, are you a 1 or are you a 2? And I think there's a lot of guys that are in between a 1 and a 2 that you kind of deem 1.5 guys. I thought Michael Pittman Jr. out of USC should have been a first-round pick. He was not. He did go in the second round. I think so far, with rotating cast of characters at the quarterback position, the results for Pittman have been there. But I still don't know if I view him as a top 10 wide receiver in the league. So I think he's one of those 1.5 guys. Like, he, to me, is kind of like Christian Kirk with the Jacksonville Jaguars, where you have a solid wide receiver, you have a very good wide receiver, but you need another piece in the wide receiving room to really get the best production out of that offense. So I'm going to say offside when you ask me, is Michael Pittman Jr. a true number 1 wide receiver?
Offside.
I find that interesting that there's only 10 guys, and outside of that, you're not number 1 wide receiver. So only a third of the NFL teams have a number 1 wideout?
So, there's a few guys that you could consider top 10 wide receivers that fall just short. So if you want to say, okay, the number extends like 13 or 14, that's fine. But am I shaking in my boots about Michael Pittman Jr.? No. And that's how I kind of view a number 1 wide receiver. Like the Patriots, they don't have a number 1 wide receiver on their team, but just because you're first on the depth chart doesn't mean that you're a true bona fide number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. I like Pittman. He's good. I just don't think he's great. And that's what I kind of referred to for number 1 wide receivers. Great wide receivers.
Now, Jim Harbaugh took over a talented Chargers team that has underachieved with Brandon Staley, but was also facing severe cap issues. Now reports say the team is shopping Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and star wideout Keenan Allen. Onside, offside, with all of these different potential changes on the roster, you still expect Harbaugh to win at least 7 games in 2024.
Yeah, because he has the quarterback, and then also Harbaugh just knows how to win everywhere he goes. So if you're going to set the bar of 7 games next season, and also it's going to be a total culture shock in a positive way for that team, yeah, I think the Chargers will win at least 7 games next year, even with all the moves. And I saw that Joey Bosa's mom was trying to get Joey Bosa to go to the Niners and team up with her other son. So how about that? But on sides here, you still expect Harbaugh to win at least 7 games in 2024.
Now, last night's SEC Women's Championship game between LSU and South Carolina ended in a wild brawl that saw 6 players get ejected. Now, all 6 of those players, including Gamecock star Camila Cardozo, will likely miss the first game of the NCAA tournament.
Now, is that true? Because I saw that was first reported, and they came back from the broadcast, and they said only one of the players is going to be suspended.
So, by rule, if you're ejected for a fight, you're automatically suspended for the next game, including tournament games. However, they have to have a full report on who was ejected for what reason. So if you were ejected for fighting, it's an automatic 1-game suspension. If you were ejected for other reasons, leaving the bench, this and that, you might be able to skate by. But as of right now, all 6 of those players, as we see it now, will likely miss the first game of the NCAA tournament. So onside, offside, suspending those 6 players for one tournament game is a reasonable punishment.
Offside. Like everyone likes to get up in arms about things. I will not get up in arms about that small fight that occurred yesterday. Like, that was a kerfuffle. That was not like a brawl. That was not like a melee. I don't think anyone really needs to seriously be suspended and cost them NCAA tournament games. So, there we go. That's Onside Offside. It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Evan Washburn, NFL on CBS, is going to join us on the other side, as this has been a free agency frenzy day. I know it's technically the legal tampering window, but you've had a lot of things come to fruition today, as Kevin Byard is signing a 2-year deal. This was from yesterday with the Bears. We also do know that you have Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta, 4 years, $180, $100 guaranteed. Russell Wilson, vet minimum to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Saquon Barkley on a 3-year deal, $26 fully guaranteed to the Philadelphia Eagles. Josh Jacobs to the Packers, released is going to be Aaron Jones. And then Christian Wilkins lands a behemoth contract. 4 years, $110 million, $84.75, fully guaranteed. Tony Pollard going to Tennessee as well. So we'll continue to keep you updated. Evan Washburn will join us on the other side. And the Cardinals just signed Sean Murphy-Bunting.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Alrighty, hour number 2 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. We have the legal tampering window underway since noon Eastern time when we got some big names reportedly off the board. We know late last night that Russell Wilson did sign a veteran minimum deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now today, Kirk Cousins going to the Atlanta Falcons. You also had Saquon Barkley going to the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Packers, they do release Aaron Jones, but they did sign Josh Jacobs and so much more. We go out to the guest line right now and welcome in NFL on CBS reporter, and that, of course, is Evan Washburn, kind enough to once again join us on CBS Sports Radio. Evan, appreciate the time. Thanks so much for doing this, and how are you?
I'm doing well. Good to be with you, Zach. You're catching me amidst trying to follow along with all the football news and also getting ready for some college hoops. So it's a good time, but it's a tough time on a brain that can only handle a few things at once.
Well, you did a nice job yesterday. I was watching you as Drake punched another ticket to the NCAA tournament game, and that game, looking back at the MVC championship game, it was looking like Drake was going to run away with it, and then at the end, that ended up being a pretty damn good game and a pretty good finish.
It did. That tournament delivers. Arch Madness is always a great time, and Drake's kind of been the standard here in recent years. And it was nice to see Indiana State make that run, because that would have been a tough way to close out what's been a special season in Terre Haute. Now, whether or not they did enough to get in, I think they deserve an at-large. It feels like bracketologists come down on the other side of it with the Sycamores, but they are a tournament team that would be a great story with Josh Schertz and Robbie Avila and really a quality team. But it was the father-son duo that did it again.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Evan Washburn here with us. So let's start with the Steelers. They inked Russell Wilson to a veteran minimum deal last night. Were you surprised by this? Because I always knew Russ wanted to go there, but what I wasn't sure was would the Pittsburgh Steelers reciprocate and would they actually bring him in, basically saying that this is the end for Kenny Pickett, in my opinion, as a starting quarterback.
I was surprised until I was reminded, either when I saw the official info or to myself, that he's playing on the vet minimum. I mean, they basically get to take a flyer on Russell Wilson, who still has some game left, and he's just suffering from his high is the ultimate high. I mean, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback that has potential Hall of Fame numbers. He hasn't been that in a number of years, but for what ends up being a little over $1 million in your Pittsburgh, why not do that? I'm not with you that this means he's the day one starter. I don't believe that that's locked in. I think that based off the way that Pittsburgh handles things, and obviously Mike Tomlin running that operation, it's all about competition. And I think the idea is to bring in a guy like Russell Wilson, who feels like he still has some game left, and see what's there, and then also make it clear to Kenny Pickett that he's going to have to compete to win his job again.
Talking to Evan Washburn, getting to Kirk Cousins. It's a 4-year, $180 million deal. $100 million is guaranteed. You know, people could say what they want about Kirk Cousins. I think he's a good quarterback, not a great quarterback. But my, oh my, I don't think anyone's been a better businessman, maybe outside of Darrelle Revis, than Kirk Cousins with the way that he's been able to keep on getting these deals done.
Yeah, he's timed it out well. And it all really goes back to what he did in Washington. And look, outside of the quarterback position, I understand why the franchise tag is something the players really don't like, because it puts you in a situation of vulnerability when it comes to injury and it being a one-year deal. But even thinking back to Lamar Jackson last year and Dak dealing with it, it always pays off to just ride it out and live on that tag, because now Cousins is going back to the bank for another $100 million deal. I love it for Atlanta. I'm a little surprised that Minnesota that they couldn't work something out. It seemed like there was still unfinished business there, and having Justin Jefferson and making sure that he had somebody that at least he was comfortable with throwing him the ball. So that becomes a bit of a mystery at this point. But this is huge for Atlanta, that, as we know, has all the pieces, especially offensively, you would think, to put together a much better product than they did a year ago if they can have some stability at the quarterback position.
And I can't wait to see what now the Vikings do in response, because, you know, I felt like Kirk played his last game in Minnesota, but now it's where do you go from here? I think a trade for Justin Fields in division would be unlikely, and I think that a lot of other dominoes would need to fall before Chicago would even consider that. But once after that, you probably feel right with the Vikings that they're sitting there at 11. They're going to be moving up in the draft, or they're going to take whatever quarterback's available at 11.
Agreed. I would probably lean more towards the draft, but I keep going back to the situation. They have a generational talent at wide receiver, and they need to make sure that he's happy and he feels somewhat satisfied with who they're deciding to put under center, whether that is Justin Fields. And to your point, I think that's going to be a tall order based off of the division, and maybe that's not the type of quarterback that Justin Jefferson wants to play with. But I think throwing in a young quarterback, a rookie, into that situation could also be challenging. So this puts Kevin O'Connell in a tough spot there as he tries to keep what felt like a kind of a special thing building when they won a bunch of games last year, tight games, and then got off to a slower start this year, but still seemed, and then obviously the Cousins injury put sort of a damper on the tail end of the season. But that's one of those reminders in the NFL how quickly things can change from where they were a few years, as recent as 2 years ago in the postseason to now without Kirk Cousins and no real answer at quarterback.
The running back market, I'm surprised how quickly this has moved, right? Tony Pollard lands in Tennessee. Saquon goes down the turnpike from New York, winding up in Philadelphia. Josh Jacobs is no longer going to be a Raider. Now he's going to be a Green Bay Packer. I'm surprised by how many running backs have been off the board, a few hours into this legal tampering window.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think it's probably their fight to increase their value by withholding their services is realized that it's not going to work. So accepting deals, creating comps and sort of making it a competitive market, knowing that there was a lot of really talented backs available. So, hey, grab a spot while there's spots available, probably made the negotiations and the conversations quicker, more efficient between representation and organization. And I think that each landing spot makes a lot of sense. And there are teams that want to run the ball, and there's some really talented backs. I mean, the last one hanging out there, as we sit here, unless something's changed, Derrick Henry, how that plays out, it'll be interesting. I know he's been attached, at least through speculation, to Baltimore. So obviously that being in my backyard here, I'd be curious how that would play out.
Talking to Evan Washburn right now, NFL on CBS. Your outlook of the Packers, right? Year one without Aaron Rodgers, they make the playoffs. They win a playoff game, taking it to the Dallas Cowboys. Now they get Josh Jacobs, but they say goodbye to Aaron Jones. What do you think they're building in Green Bay as we currently sit here?
Well, they're building it around Jordan Love and hoping that what we saw and what they saw in the back half of the season, but really a large portion of the season from him, just takes another step, because he proved to a lot of people, and that building most importantly, that he's capable of being the franchise quarterback. Whether he's the next Aaron Rodgers, still got a long way to go there. The Aaron Jones sort of, to me, it's exchanging similar parts when you look at Jacobs and Jones. I really like Aaron Jones. I think he's so dynamic out of the backfield as a pass catcher. Jacobs can do that as well. And that's something that's clearly been valued here in the running back market. I think what Christian McCaffrey's done and the way the game's played right now, you really need to be able to be effective in that area. So they get that in Jacobs, and now Aaron Jones moves on. But look, I think Green Bay's in a great position, and we just finished talking about Minnesota. They don't have a quarterback right now. They seem to be in bit transition. Chicago's going to have a rookie quarterback most likely. So this is a good time for Detroit and Green Bay to keep that rivalry rolling for top spot in the North.
You heard some whispers last week about Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles. Everyone knew he was done with the Giants, but when it got announced today that they've agreed to terms in the framework of this deal, Saquon going to Philadelphia, this is just like the Howie Roseman kind of move to a T, right?
It is. It kind of feels like it's out of a sports movie too, or the sequel to a sports movie, where he goes down 95 to their bitter rival, and he's going to punish them for all the things he felt like he didn't get out of the Giants. And I think it's great, and I think it helps Jalen Hurts. It's a new look offense there in Philly. Last year, obviously, the way it ended was a disaster, and I think Saquon still has plenty of game left in those big quads, man. He can still bring it, and I think that he's going to be motivated to prove that, because there's been so much discussion. Really, I mean, as successful as he's been, there's been so much doubt for a guy who all he's done when healthy is produce and really lead in a lot of ways, both on and off the field there in New York. So I love the move, and I'm with you. I mean, it screams Howie Roseman, finding good players at good value.
So we have Baker Mayfield back in Tampa Bay. You have Russell Wilson landing with the Steelers, Kirk Cousins to Atlanta. Now the most fascinating, intriguing question to me is, where's Justin Fields going to get traded to? Do you have like a name or two for a landing spot that you say, okay, that should be a team that should go try to get a deal done with Justin Fields via trade?
I thought you were going to say, where's Joe Flacco going to sign? that's the one quarterback.
Well, you know what, Evan? If anyone knows the answer to that, outside of Joe, it would be you, because of your guys' relationship.
True. I haven't checked in with him in a little while. I'm sure he's enjoying himself and hanging out with the kiddos. That one will be a fun one to see what happens. I would say you laid out the challenges with Minnesota in division. That would seem to make sense. I think Washington, another team to keep your eye on there, depending on how they want to play this thing out. That the market it's shrinking though, and each day that passes makes it more challenging for Ryan Pace and that group to figure out what it is they want to do in terms of what is acceptable value for Justin Fields, because there's clearly still plenty of game there, and there's decisions, I guess, contractually that factor into this as well. But sitting here right now, I mean, I would say Washington's a team to keep your eye on that may make some sense. But again, it's like one of those musical chairs deals where a lot of these spots seem to have at least what they think right now is the answer at quarterback.
So if it is Washington, does that mean Adam Peters passes on a quarterback at 2 and maybe trades that pick with the new regime coming in and get a bunch of future first-round picks? Is that what you're kind of thinking? And then you call up the Bears and see if you get a Fields deal done?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's been discussed with New England and Washington to some degree. I mean, like I would say if I were in that position, I'd lean more towards you've got a new head coach, new GM, as you laid out in Peters, new ownership. This is probably a good time to bring in a Drake May or Daniels and kind of start fresh in that way. But if there's a desire to come up from a team like Minnesota, as you mentioned, 11, or somebody even closer, that can really set up your organization too right out of the gate. So look, this is what this season is all about, the season before the season. And it's going to be interesting because of how talented, at least on paper, this draft class appears to be.
And the other team I'll throw out there, and everyone tells me it can't happen because Luke Getsy and Fields, I guess, didn't get along last season in Chicago. But if this price gets so cheap for Justin Fields, I think the Raiders should maybe take a flyer on him.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't. And I can't think of, as we sit here and talk right now, of anything being contentious in terms of that relationship or any reporting in that regard. So look, it becomes, it's different. And this is what you saw with the Mac Jones deal too. It's these guys where you're picking up the 5th-year option. You have to extend them right away. It's hard to take a flyer on him, especially if Chicago is still asking for a pretty high price. But it is interesting how these draft picks, the value of them right now changes dramatically once there's a player actually attached to it, i.e. they were drafted by that guy, and then all of a sudden they become much more expendable.
He is Evan Washburn, NFL on CBS. You could also catch him throughout March Madness on the sideline, and he'll keep on giving you great reports throughout all the chaos that we're about to undergo through during the next month. Evan, great to have you on. Appreciate it.
You got it, Zach. Good to be with you.
There you go. Evan Washburn joining us on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And I'm glad that he brought up the Commanders as a potential destination for Justin Fields. That's not where I was going to go. But I do have another team that I'll throw into the hopper of teams that could be pursuing the services of Justin Fields. And we'll get into that when we return in 5 minutes right here on CBS Sports Radio. You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
The Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio. Here's Zach Gelb.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We've had 3 more moves since we have gone to break. This is all reported by Ian Rappaport. The Carolina Panthers, they're going to improve their offensive line. They are signing Dolphins guard Robert Hunt to a massive deal. It is a 5-year deal for $100 million. So Dave Canales and Morgan running the Carolina Panthers, just trying to protect their quarterback in Bryce Young, who was not protected well a year ago in his rookie season. The Green Bay Packers, who have been active today, getting rid of Aaron Jones, but signing Josh Jacobs. Also, according to Ian Rappaport, they are expected to sign Giant safety Xavier McKinney. It's a 4-year deal worth $68 million. I like that contract. And that is $25 million in year one for Xavier McKinney in Green Bay in some of the contract details. And then finally, Devin Motor Singletary, who played for the Bills and played for the Texans, he has reached an agreement to go to the New York Giants. And he will be replacing or trying to replace Saquon Barkley, who we know is now off to the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, Devin Motor Singletary, every time I watch him, like, he is not an every game number one running back. But there is a stretch, whether it was in Buffalo or the Texans, where he goes on these 4 or 5 game runs where you're saying, wow, this is what we thought he could be when he was coming out of FAU in Devin Motor Singletary. He never puts it together for an entirety of a season where you think you have a legitimate number one running back in the league, but he is a guy that I think is a very strong 2 that puts up numbers. Like, you look at his time in Buffalo and then the 1 year with the Texans, and he could also catch the ball out of the backfield as well. As a season ago, he had 30 catches. Year before that, he had 38. The year before that, he had 40. But rushing the football, last season was a career high, 898 yards, 819, 870. Like, his career average is 4.6 yards per carry. So he's a solid running back, and his yards per catch is 6.7. But whenever you start to buy in on Devin Motor Singletary and start to say, okay, this is the player that we thought he could be, he then gets very quiet for a game or two and then goes back off for another game, then gets quiet, then maybe has 2-3 games in a row. So that's just what he's been in the NFL. Okay, so from a fan standpoint right now, I think the most intriguing name, and he's not a free agent, but someone that's going to be made available is Justin Fields. Baker back with Tampa, Kirk Cousins off to Atlanta, and Russell Wilson lands with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now Justin Fields and where he lands is extremely intriguing. And you got to start to make that decision. And I don't think Justin Fields is going to get traded until probably the draft. I would be mildly surprised if Justin Fields gets traded a week before the draft. Like anywhere from now until a week before the draft, I will be mildly surprised because you have a few dominoes that need to fall. First is free agency, right? Baker didn't get to the market. He got the deal done with Tampa. Russell Wilson was available. He goes to Pittsburgh in that $1.2 million deal. And now Kirk Cousins lands in Atlanta. So you could take Atlanta now out of the running for Justin Fields. You could take Pittsburgh out of the running for Justin Fields. And Baker Mayfield doesn't need to get into the running because they kept their own guy. So you start to look around the NFL, teams that could use Justin Fields. Stu, let me first get your 2 cents on your football team. So they make a big move today in Christian Wilkins, who is such an incredibly large, athletic defensive lineman. When he was at Clemson, he was the guy when they won a championship that was doing a full split on the championship stage. And he has been a really good defensive lineman in this league. So I like that move. It opens up Max Crosby even more. And we already know that Crosby stats are through the roof. So that's good on the defensive side of the ball. But then offensively, right now you don't have a quarterback unless you are a Aiden O'Connell fan. And I don't think that's the case. Stu can't even be a stan for Aiden O'Connell. You have Devontae Adams. But then you told us last year, Antonio Pierce, and I know the GM now is Tom Telesco, that Josh Jacobs is going to be a major part of the identity of this franchise moving forward. And even though it's not official yet, because something could always happen in the 11th hour, but Josh Jacobs agreed to terms today, or to a framework of a deal with the Green Bay Packers. So where are you at with your football team, Stu, as you get a little excitement today, but then you didn't even get to enjoy it that long before you find out that, boom, Josh Jacobs is reportedly on his way to the Green Bay Packers.
The Wilkins signing is fantastic. I mean, I'm so excited for that, to finally have, 2 great defensive linemen. Yeah. Probably for the first time in my lifetime that's happened. So
can I get a little energy, Stu,
I'm happy. Look, I'm happy.
You seem like you just attended a wake or something.
They still need a quarterback. And until they get a quarterback, I can't really get too excited. I mean, I think Fields is the guy they have to get. If they can't get up to get Jaden Daniels, it has to be Fields. And if it's not either of those 2 guys, then, I mean, maybe it's a Penix falling to them at 13, or they trade up a couple picks to get Penix. But even then, I'm not too excited. I think anything other than Daniels and or Fields, to me, is a disappointment.
You don't want Drake May?
I don't really want Drake May now.
Isn't it crazy how much the stock of Drake May has fallen? Where for the last 2 years, it's been get ready for Williams and May. And Stu doesn't have a quarterback. My team doesn't have a quarterback. And we'll get back to my team in just a second. But Stu doesn't want Drake May. And I don't even want Drake May as well. And it's in a weird spot because it's not like we really have much to pick from. But Stu and I both agree that we don't want either of our teams. And for you, it's a little bit different because you'd have to trade up to get him. My team would just pass on him. Or maybe you trade back. Or I'd rather have Jaden Daniels. But it is kind of funny how that works out, that both of us don't have a quarterback. You have Aiden O'Connell. After Mac Jones getting traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars, all I could get happy for is Zappy. And there's not much to get happy about with Zappy. And both of us do not want Drake May. It's fascinating from a coverage standpoint how much the stock of Drake May has fallen. It's not just us two, because even Phil Simms, right, who evaluates quarterbacks, has won a Super Bowl in this league, won a Super Bowl MVP. Even Phil Simms got on this show the other day after his son said Drake May's the sixth best quarterback in this draft, and he goes, I hear all the hype around the Williams. I hear all the hype around Daniels. I hear all the hype. He even mentioned Bo Nix. And he goes, when you turn on the field, you're impressed. The film, you're impressed with those guys. When he turned on the film, and I'm just going with Phil said, in regards to Drake May, he wasn't as impressed with what people were saying and the way that it was perceived that Drake May was. It's very intriguing, Samter, that even before the draft started, and this happens from time to time where we think guys are falling and they don't end up falling, that Drake May is the name right now that's cold and a lot of people just don't want to touch.
It is a little bit weird to me, but I also, the NFL draft, especially for quarterbacks, is such a crapshoot. We were just talking about the 2021 draft. I mean, you had Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. 4 of the 5 of those guys who were in the top 15 of the draft are not even going to be on their teams after 4 years. Baker Mayfield, the number 1 overall pick, wasn't on his team after 4 years. Josh Rosen was gone, number 10 pick.
In a year.
Gone after a year. There were so many of these guys that we were high on, low on. Who knows? Who doesn't know? Patrick Mahomes was 10, and Deshaun Watson was 12, and nobody really had them on the radar except for Andy Reid at that time. Drake May, I look at his stats. I've watched some of his games. He doesn't blow me out of the water, but, his numbers are good. He's been groomed and talked about as the guy for so long as being the guy. Sometimes I think that people kind of get caught in the moment. The other guy.
Yeah.
They get caught in the moment, right? Either Drake May has it or he doesn't. I don't think that Drake May lost it from his junior year to now. I mean, he had 4,300 yards, 38 touchdowns, 7 picks last year, and then 3,600 yards, 24 and 9.
So can I just ask you a simple question?
I don't think he lost it in those 2 years.
Let me ask you just it this way. We as fans remember things, and we remember things sometimes in a stupid way. Until C.J. Stroud did what he did, everyone said, even they said about C.J. Stroud, can't draft an Ohio State quarterback. Is it because Drake May was at UNC and you had Mitch Trubisky, who I like to call Mitch Trubusky, at UNC? Is that just people see another UNC quarterback and they're like, I saw what happened with Trubusky, who went in front of Mahomes and Watson, and the Bears traded up from 3 to 2. Is that maybe why when push comes to shove, as you get into this month or two leading up to the draft, that all of a sudden people start to panic and say they're out?
I don't think so. That was 7 years ago.
I think it plays a factor.
I mean, maybe.
People remember busts.
But I don't think that plays a factor for GMs and scouts and player personnel people.
But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the takes coming from the media.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, like I said, it was 7 years ago. We've seen a lot of situations where, with the Ohio State quarterbacks, it was like every year or two, there was another Ohio State guy coming out and another Ohio State guy being a bust. It was year after year after year. So it was consistent. Same thing with the Jeff Tedford thing. It was like year after year after year, there was a consistency. This was just 2 guys spanned out over 7 years, and they're so different, right?
Now, you say that, but
Trubisky had that 1 year.
But you say that. I know he's been in multiple spots. There are some people, I don't think it's a majority, but there's a minority of people that are like, can't draft Caleb Williams because he played at USC. I've heard that. And we're going back to guys like Matt Leinart and Mark Sanchez for crying out loud. There's just some schools, when there's a quarterback available, people just get a little uneasy because of things that happened in the past. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's smart. But I do think that plays a factor in people's minds because they remember things about certain quarterbacks.
I think people, and for me, it's more about the coach and the system than it is the school, right? So, I look at USC and I associate Caleb Williams more with Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, and Kyler Murray than I do with, the Leinarts and the Sanchez's who were there under Pete Carroll. Completely different system, completely different coaching. So, look at maybe Kyler Murray. Look at Jalen Hurts. Look at the guys who Lincoln Riley had, and then you can conflate that and make that comparison more apples to apples with Caleb Williams. So I think that's a better comparison than looking at like a Leinart and a Sanchez in those USC colors. But I understand your point. Yes, do I think that there are people in the media and fans who see UNC quarterback, and because there have been so few, you just automatically 7 years ago go back to Mitch Trubisky? Sure, it's idiotic. Anyone who does that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about.
But we do a lot of idiotic things as fans.
Sure, but I mean, it doesn't mean that by doing an idiotic thing makes it right or makes it,
like, for
reliable
example,
or feasible.
People that, when I say I want the Patriots to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. if Jaden Daniels isn't available, people go, oh, how'd that work out for Keyshawn Johnson and the Jets when they drafted him where they drafted him? Like, that's more than 5 years ago, but people still remember those things. And it's just an inane process about the draft. Stu, I have bad news for you, though. With your football team and the uncertainty with your football team, enjoy Davante Adams while you have him. Because if it wasn't for the dead cap, I think he would have already requested a trade. As much as he loves Antonio Pierce and all that, I think that they get a year this year, and then next year the dead cap is $15.7 million, as he has 2 years remaining after this season on a contract. I think this will be Davante Adams' last season with the Las Vegas Raiders, and I think he will try to spark back up that trade request and those trade dramas a year from now.
One thing, I don't want to speak for Stu because, Stu's the Raider fan here. However, when I look at what Antonio Pierce is doing.
Oh, yeah, but hold on, because Santer's now an AFC West expert, by the way, with this 1 year of Chiefs fandom.
I mean, you doubted me, and I was right in every turn. Yeah. So maybe, you should start listening to my AFC West takes here.
Yeah. What bandwagon you jumping on this year?
No, it's still the Chiefs.
Okay.
Antonio Pierce signed a defensive tackle who's going to help with Max Crosby and help solidify the trenches there on the defensive side. Let go of their supposedly going to be high-priced running back, where you can get a running back in the 4th round for like nothing. And they're going to find a quarterback. You would think you have Davante Adams. Quarterbacks want to play there, whether you draft somebody or you make a trade or a free agency. I look at Antonio Pierce and what he's doing.
Quarterbacks are going to want to play there? Did you say?
I think so, because I think people are going to want to pay for Antonio Pierce. First of all, if you heard all the quarterbacks from the Combine talking about their interviews with teams, every single one of them, to a man, when they were asked about their favorite interviews or talking to Antonio Pierce, every one of them was like, man, that guy's awesome. I can't wait to play for him. I would love to play for him. Antonio Pierce is awesome.
But does anyone ever come out and say, oh, yeah, I had an interview with the team and the coach sucks?
No,
like,
but there was a different energy when they were talking about their interviews with the Commanders than when they were talking about Antonio Pierce. But my point is, Antonio Pierce is doing very similar things to what Dan Campbell did, right? Former player, hard-nosed guy, tough guy.
Sure.
He's going to build in the trenches.
I was the first one that said that.
He's going to build from the inside out, and he's doing it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, Dan Campbell eventually got his quarterback, but he didn't start with the quarterback.
No.
He built from the inside out. That's what Antonio Pierce is doing. Davante Adams is going to see that. It's going to come to fruition in a year or two. It might not be this year, but they're going to get their quarterback eventually, and they're going to have that foundation built up. That the Raiders, I love what they're doing, and I'm really excited to see what Pierce does.
Since you're practically a virgin to the AFC West, since you just have joined the team, the Raiders, whenever something goes well, it has less than a year expiration date. And Stu knows that very well, unfortunately. Everyone could be loving Antonio Pierce now, but if they roll into this season with underwhelming quarterback play again, Davante Adams is eventually going to say, as much as I love this team and I love Antonio Pierce and I love Max Crosby, yeah, I got to get up out of here. And I just don't know if they're going to be able to find that quarterback, but let's see what happens in the draft, and let's see what happens via the trade market if they cannot land a quarterback in this draft class. It kind of does feel to me that Davante Adams has 1 year left with the Raiders, and he'll give them one more chance, and it will give them one more opportunity to get it done. But if they don't start moving into a spot where it's like, okay, I have my guy at quarterback, then I think next year he gets traded from that organization. All righty, we teased it before the break. We'll get to it on the other side. I have a Justin Fields destination that not many are talking about, and we'll further look into the market of Justin Fields when we return. Update time first. Here's the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
Well, it's not Atlanta for Justin Fields because the Falcons have found their quarterback after flirting with Kirk Cousins. They have landed the ex-Viking on a 4-year, $180 million deal, including a $50 million signing bonus. Robert Hunt got a game-changing deal from the Panthers, 5 years, $100 million. And Saquon Barkley's battles with the Giants front office are over. His battles against them have now begun, I should say, as he gets a 3-year deal from the Eagles worth over $37 million. And Xavier McKinney also departing New York, a 4-year deal from the Packers worth $68 million. Green Bay said goodbye to Aaron Jones after signing Josh Jacobs away from the Raiders. And the Bears started the day by signing DeAndre Swift away from the Eagles. 3 years, $24 million. Not too long after, the Titans gave Tony Pollard the same deal. Josh Jacobs, as I mentioned, heading to Green Bay. The Vikings come to terms with Jonathan Greenard on a 4-year, $76 million deal. And Cy Young Award winner Garrett Cole went for an MRI after he had trouble recovering between starts. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, this is JR. Let's hang out weeknights here on CBS Sports Radio for my show, the JR Sport Brief, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
The Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio. Here's Zach Gelb.
All right, it is a Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We're trying to find the destination for Justin Fields. Baker Mayfield back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Kirk Cousins off to the ATL. And then you do have Russell Wilson landing with the Steelers. When we go division by division, I know people will say, but Luke Getsy and him didn't have a good relationship. I don't think the Raiders are really in a position to say, because the OC may have not got along the entirety of a season with the quarterback to pass on a quarterback. I do think the Raiders are in play. The Broncos, I haven't heard them talked about. And I got to look at whatever draft capital that they have remaining, but who even knows what this is going to be? But I can't say the Broncos wouldn't be in play. Everyone in the AFC North is now out. The Ravens were never in. The Browns were never in. The Steelers are the only team that were in, and they just made the move for us. We know the Bengals have Burrow. In the AFC South, no one's in there. Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. So you look around the AFC, there's one more destination that I'll leave out. I'll get back to them in just a second. But in the NFC, what did you think, Samter, about Evan Washburn throwing the Commanders out there? Now, in theory, it would be, all right, Caleb Williams goes 1, and then people are going to try to trade up for either Drake May or Jaden Daniels, whoever the preference is. And you could go get, bare minimum 2 or 3 more first-round picks for future years when you're really just building that team. You trade back from number 2, you trade that pick, and then you go give one of those picks that you get or future or other draft capital that you have to go land, Justin Fields in a trade. Do you think that made sense, the Commanders maybe being in play for Justin Fields?
It makes more sense for the Patriots at 3, but the Commanders having their pick of Jaden or Drake May, based off of everything that we've been hearing from everybody, at least one of those guys is going to be pretty good. And if you have your pick of them, if you're the Patriots at 3 and the guy that you think is going to be the guy, Jaden or Drake, is off the board.
Yes, stop saying the Patriots for a second, because that's where I'm going for. This was the whole buildup that I had. I was going to say the Patriots were going to be the surprise destination. So stop mentioning the Patriots for a GD second,
I can't
all right?
read your mind. I'm just telling you right now.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
No, listen, I don't think that Fields makes sense for the Commanders. I think the Commanders have the perfect position, unless someone comes to them with a ridiculous 3 first-round draft pick move up
Which
kind of
could
thing.
happen. The Raiders would do it.
Sure, but I mean the Raiders are sitting where? What number?
The Raiders are 13.
So for you to move down to 13, you're going to miss out on a lot. I mean, you're going to have to get 13, 2 other first-round picks, and something else. Mm-hmm. So maybe
the Commanders can't do
that?
it. You want to know why the Commanders can't do it? Because you were trying to make a big splash in the coaching cycle. You weren't able to do that. The guy that you thought you were going to get goes back to Detroit. If you now tell your fans, when they're trying to build them up on this new regime, this new hope, all that, and it's great that Daniel Snyder's out, but Josh Harris is an NFL owner. Can't hire Dan Quinn, which is not a bad hire, but it's an underwhelming hire. And then you have all this hype about the second overall pick in the draft. You can't say we're going to trade down and we're going to get a bunch of future picks and then we're going to bring in Justin Fields. I just don't think there would be a great level of excitement for that. You need a guy that it's going to be who has the most upside, who's going to be there for the future. And RG3 was on with us, and I wholeheartedly agree with him. I think the second best quarterback in this draft is Jaden Daniels. I'm taking Jaden Daniels, and I'm not even thinking twice about it if I'm the Washington Commanders. You know what? I would even say it's more likely the Giants trade for Justin Fields than it would be the Washington Commanders in the NFC East. Like, the Giants at least took a meeting with Russell Wilson. We don't even know if Daniel Jones is going to be ready for the start of the season. You know, maybe they want to go after Justin Fields for giving up a very minimal pick, because I don't even know if Fields is going to go for a second-round pick anymore. There was some outside talk it could be a first-round pick. I never bought it. Maybe conditions get it to a first. But now it doesn't even seem like the second-round pick. It may be a third that's going to be a conditional that turns into a 2.
And listen, it sounds like maybe the Raiders might not even be willing to move up that far to get a quarterback because they just signed their new starter for the rest of their career.
Whoa, wait. They signed the quarterback, the Raiders?
They did sign the quarterback.
Is this breaking news?
It is breaking news.
Hold on. So this is going to be marinated in Samter sarcasm just by the way that he sets it up.
Well, a little bit. A little bit.
Can I get a hint on who this player is?
This is a guy I love.
So
he was a starting quarterback last year.
It's not Joe Flacco, though.
Nope.
Okay. Give me another hint.
He was a starting quarterback who took over because the starter got injured.
Jacoby Brissett?
Nope, but you're on the right path. A team that Brissett was
Gardner
on.
Minshew.
Gardner Minshew is headed to the Vegas Raiders, baby. I love Gardner Minshew. Stu's pissed off over here because he's calling it a Band-Aid. Gardner Minshew's the kind of guy that can get you a couple wins. If you don't think that Fields is the guy, then use Gardner for a year or two.
Here's what you're missing.
I love Gardner.
Here's what you're missing. Now the Raiders are not signing Justin Fields or trading for Justin Fields.
Yeah, they're punting. They're punting it down the road again.
Nope. Guys, you are not seeing what's happening here.
Tell us.
Gardner Minshew is the bridge quarterback. They will be, even if they wait at 13, if they can't trade up, then at 13, they will be taking a quarterback. You can guarantee it. Wherever the Raiders end up picking in the first round, Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce are going in to get a quarterback. And Gardner Minshew is someone that is solid. He's fine. And he does have some ego because he runs around with that mustache, obviously. But he's not someone that's going to be a malcontent when you go to him and say, all right, now you're getting benched and we're going to the next guy.
So here's my question. If you're the Raiders at 13 and you have your choice of trading, let's say, a third or even a second for Justin Fields, or drafting J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix, what would you do? And Stu, you can answer this too. As the Raiders, Penix, McCarthy, Fields.
I would say Fields would be the first option.
Interesting. You're big on Penix. I'm surprised you would go Fields first.
I wouldn't say I'm big on Penix. I think Penix is the fourth best quarterback. Yeah, I would go Penix 4. And McCarthy 5. I think there's more upside to McCarthy, but I think Penix would be solid with the Raiders. Having Devontae Adams there, that's enough for him to be serviceable, I think, whenever he goes in on your number 1. So I would rank it Fields 1, Penix 2, McCarthy 3.
Penix feels like an Al Davis kind of guy. A guy with a cannon for an arm who can throw the ball a million miles. That's an Al Davis guy.
I don't know, because there's not a lot of hype around Michael Penix Jr. entering the draft. Like, I feel like the Raiders, when Al Davis was alive, they made a lot of moves about the guys that were like quickly rising up the draft board. I feel like one week Penix's stock is falling, and the other week it's rising. I think there's a lot of inconsistencies there. Stu, how would you order those quarterbacks?
Same as you. I would go Fields probably by a pretty good margin, and I would edge. I would put Penix slightly over McCarthy.
Okay, so here's what I was going to say before Samter stole my thunder.
I will steal your thunder really quickly again. Vic Tafer of The Athletic, who's covered the Raiders for years, says the Raiders are inquiring about a potential trade for Justin Fields.
Oh, my
inquiring
goodness gracious.
About a potential trade. There's
so
a lot
let
of
me tell
there.
you, I've put out some predictions, and I don't usually get petty with this, but there's always some predictions that you remember where you get slammed for it. Back in December, I got slammed for suggesting the Steelers to sign Russell Wilson eventually. And I went back last night and had some fun at the expense of those dopes that basically told me I had no clue what I'm talking about. But I put out 10 predictions over the weekend that we all gave on the air on Friday that I gave on the air. And I heard from a lot of Raiders fans, there's a 0% chance, that Justin Fields gets traded to the Raiders. I may throw a little bit of a fiesta if Justin Fields gets traded to the Raiders. And I would have a lot of fun going back and forth on social media with some of these dopes.
And sorry for continuing to steal your thunder. What were you going to say in the next 90 seconds?
Oh, I was going to say, if Jaden Daniels gets picked 2 by the Commanders, which I think the Commanders should do, at 3, I do not want Drake May. I do not want Drake May as the quarterback of the Patriots. I don't want J.J. McCarthy as the quarterback of the Patriots. I don't want Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr. No, 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 no. I would love Caleb Williams, but it's not going to happen. So I want Jaden Daniels. But if they can't get Jaden Daniels, I'm fine with doing a few things. 1, taking Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3. Or you don't want to do that, trade the picks, get a bunch of future first rounders. Or maybe you end up doing both of those things, take Harrison, trade the pick as well, and then you call up the Bears, and even if you have to give it 2, I'm fine giving it 2 for Justin Fields. I would rather have Justin Fields as the quarterback of the Patriots next year than Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, or Michael Penix Jr., or Bo Nix, or Spencer Rattler, like whatever quarterback you want to give me. I don't want those guys. I'd rather have Fields. So that's where I'm at. They can't get Daniels. I'm fine with taking Harrison or trading the pick and then acquiring the services via trade for a year of one Justin Fields. Thank you very much. Alrighty, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. I sounded like a sports talk radio caller there. You know, the last guy stole my thunder. Santa stole my thunder. Moist Mike. The Moist Mike Show on CBS Sports Radio continues momentarily.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio, hour number 2 of our radio program. I think we have the numbers now on the Josh Jacobs deal landing with the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Jones has been released. So according to Jordan Schultz, it's a 4-year deal worth $48 million. Now, all you cap nerds are originally going to be like, oh, that's an overpay for Josh Jacobs if you're going to pay him about $12 million a year. I'm at a point where I don't even care what the total value of the deal is. I just want to see what the guaranteed is. And I don't see a guaranteed number from Jordan Schultz necessarily, but Dove Kleiman, the aggregator, he says it's only $12.5 million guaranteed. Now, I don't know. Maybe Dove is right. Maybe the information he got is good, and he just gets information, I guess, from what everyone else basically posts, but he does a good job putting that information out there. $12.5 million, Stu, if that's accurate, only being guaranteed, that seems low. Like, that doesn't pass the smell test right away. You would think Josh Jacobs would get more. So if that's true, that this is a 4-year deal, $48 million, and only $12.5 is guaranteed, I think that you should have had that matched by the Las Vegas Raiders. But once again, I don't know if the guaranteed number, I haven't seen that anywhere else yet. So if we get more from that, we will definitely update you throughout the show. So here are the big moves so far, and I think we've got them pretty much all, is that Christian Wilkins gets a massive deal from the Raiders, 4 for $110, 84.75 guaranteed. Josh Jacobs goes from the Raiders to the Packers. We just gave you what we think the numbers are. Russell Wilson, veteran minimum to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kirk Cousins, 4 years, $180 million, $100 guaranteed to the Atlanta Falcons. You have Tony Pollard going to Tennessee, and you have Saquon Barkley landing with the Eagles on a 3-year, $37.5 million deal. Could be worth up to $46.75 million with 26 fully guaranteed. Some other names that have gone down here. You have Xavier McKinney going from the Giants to the Green Bay Packers. And you have Gus Edwards, who just reached a 2-year agreement with the Chargers. So he goes from John Harbaugh to Jim Harbaugh. Gus Edwards off and running to the Los Angeles Chargers. And the Colts, they already retained and gave a new deal to Michael Pittman Jr. Now they have re-signed defensive tackle Grover Stewart to a 3-year, $39 million deal. Devin Singletary goes from the Texans to the Giants. So there is the attempted replacement for Saquon Barkley, who is off to Philadelphia. And the big offensive lineman signing of the day is Robert Hunt, formerly of the Miami Dolphins. He's on a $100 million contract to the Carolina Panthers. And you did also have Bilal Nichols, formerly of the Bears and the Raiders. He is now on a $14.4 million guaranteed deal. 3 years, $21 million is the total, and that's with the Arizona Cardinals. So I think the things to still monitor here, Samter, Justin Fields, as we talked about, Gardner Minshew is signing with the Raiders, but Vic Tafur says maybe you still keep an eye on Justin Fields to the Las Vegas Raiders. But the Fields thing is not going to happen until sometime in April. Like, that may be the week of the draft, or you get to the actual draft night in that first round, and after the first round, when you get ready to kick off round number 2 and round 3 on day 2 of the draft, which would be that Friday, the last Friday in April, then maybe you do get a deal done for Justin Fields. So that's something that we'll continue to talk about. And the market, and we've thrown teams out there. I don't believe will be the Commanders. Could Stu's Raiders get involved? Can Minnesota get involved? Can my Patriots get involved? Like Minnesota, maybe what you could do here. Like, I'm trying to think of a way that Minnesota can get a deal done. Because the Bears' preference probably is not to trade him in division to the Minnesota Vikings in case if the Bears do the most Bear thing ever and they finally get a franchise quarterback, they trade and they take Caleb Williams. Williams goes on to be a bust. And then Justin Fields goes on to have a successful career in division and just torment you for the foreseeable future with the Minnesota Vikings. I wonder, Samter, because right now, a little while ago, we thought probably a second-round pick. Now, seeing Mac Jones, and the stock of Fields is in a better spot than Mac Jones is. But after Mac only goes for a 6th-round pick, I think you're trending closer to like 3rd or 4th-round pick for Justin Fields. And I don't believe the Bears are going to keep Justin Fields on the roster. I don't think this is one of those things where someone could call up at 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227 and make a sane football point of, look how many times quarterbacks get hurt. If it's just going to be for a 4th-round pick, maybe you're just better off keeping Justin Fields. Like, I understand that argument, but I don't think the Bears will actually do that because I think they're going to try to do somewhat right by Justin Fields and give him an opportunity where he could go to play. But a team like the Vikings, who now have a quarterback need, and I do think their preference is going to try to trade up in the draft, and they're sitting there at 11, or maybe they want a McCarthy if he falls there at 11, or a Michael Penix Jr., who knows. But I could see the Vikings either trading up or staying at 11 and taking a quarterback. But let's say if they don't fall in love with anyone here in the draft, and they still go through this process, and now you said goodbye to Kirk Cousins, and Justin Fields is still there, like a 2nd-round pick, I would have to think gets the job done right now for Justin Fields easily. Like what gets the Bears to say yes tomorrow. That's how I think the Vikings could end up making a deal with one of their divisional rivals if they just get to the table first and they make a serious offer, not one of these games of negotiation grab ass where it's like, oh, I'm going to start off with a 4, and you know that the Vikings and the Bears are never going to get a deal done for Justin Fields on a 4th-round pick. I think the Vikings, they come seriously to the table to the Bears, and I'm talking about just offering a 2nd-round pick, straight up, no conditions, none of that, then I think that's the way that we could get those two to tango.
Yeah, I mean, obviously interdivision is never fun, so they'd probably have to overpay a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I guess the 2nd-round pick makes sense. And if I'm the Vikings, why am I waiting another 6 weeks for the draft before I have my quarterback situation resolved. I kind of want to know the answer now. I guess if I'm the Vikings, if there's like 2 or 3 of those guys that you think might be available at 11, like J.J. McCarthy or Penix or Bo Nix or whatever that you're really high on, maybe you say, you know what, like we can wait.
Well, here's the thing. I think Penix or McCarthy, one of those 2 guys will be available at 11. I'm not going to say both, but I do think one of those 2 guys will be available. Because right now, let's just assume this. Even if we have quarterbacks go 1, 2, and 3, where we have Williams 1, just for my mental sanity, Drake May 2 to the Commanders, then Jaden Daniels 3. Let someone live a little bit. Like the Cardinals aren't taking a quarterback. The Chargers aren't taking a quarterback. The Giants could. Tennessee's not. Atlanta's now not.
Tennessee could. I know that they like Levis, but I don't think they're sold enough on Levis. They benched him twice during the season.
But here's the thing. Your team stinks right now. And you don't just take a quarterback to take a quarterback. Will Levis did enough last year to suggest to me that he has a chance to play in this league. And also, you're bringing in a brand new coaching staff. So anything that Mike Vrabel did, I'm not carrying that over here to Callahan. I would be stunned with all the good players that are going to be available there and players that will be better than what the quarterbacks are if Tennessee takes a quarterback. So I'm going through this. Bears taking Williams. Commanders probably taking a quarterback. Patriots, even though I think there's ways they could trade out of it, probably taking a quarterback. After that, Cardinals don't need to. Chargers don't need to. The Giants could. Tennessee won't. Atlanta won't. Chicago won't. And the Jets won't. So let's say the Giants take McCarthy. Penix is sitting there at 11. It's actually not the worst thing for the Vikings to take Penix at 11. And it's not a bad landing spot for Michael Penix Jr. because you have Justin Jefferson and you have also Jordan Addison. So here's what I would do. And here's what I would think is going to be the new prediction on Minnesota, since Russell Wilson's now off the board and Justin Fields is probably has some complications with him being on the Bears. The next point here and the next place to pivot with now Kirk leaving for Minnesota is to go get someone in the draft. And I got to think that right now, either J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix Jr. is going to be the next quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. And I think people are going to try to go move up for McCarthy. So I'll just say that Minnesota stays put and they end up landing Michael Penix Jr. in a number 11.
The only thing that I would throw a wrench in that, because I think that's not a terrible idea, is when we had your boy Jay Jettas, Justin Jefferson, on the show on Radio Row.
It's a fair point.
You mentioned to him guys like Russ Wilson and Kirk Cousins. Mm-hmm. He seemed way more intrigued with the idea of a veteran quarterback who's been there than the idea of rebuilding completely with a rookie quarterback. I mean, he might be one of those guys that, like, you bring in a stopgap guy.
Joe Flacco?
Maybe a Flacco.
Joe.
Who's still out there right now? Ryan Tannehill, Jacoby Brissett, Jameis Winston, Tyrod Taylor, Sam Darnold. So, like, maybe one of those guys as a stopgap.
Darnold's been a name that's been rumored to maybe go there.
Maybe one of those guys is a stopgap Band-Aid until you can get a real quarterback. I don't think that he wants to bring in a rookie because, listen, every year it seems like there's another veteran quarterback that you weren't expecting to be available.
Yeah, but any of those guys that you just mentioned, Jameis Winston would be fun, but I don't think you get excited as a player. Like,
you know what? Justin Jefferson would be excited about Jameis. Because Jameis, listen, he'll throw a lot of picks, but he's going to throw a lot of touchdowns too.
We've been far removed from the 30-30 year for Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston has been in New Orleans where they haven't had a quarterback, and he's done nothing. All right? So
I mean, there's not a lot of names on here that are interesting to me. Drew Lock, Tyler Huntley, Josh Dobbs, Mason Rudolph, maybe? How about that? Mason Rudolph. I mean, he was a dominant force for the Steelers to end the year.
Stop. Brissett's actually not a bad name to weather the storm if you need to weather the storm.
Yeah, but similar to the Jameis Winston, it's been kind of a gap since Brissett was like a quality guy.
No, but he's been solid. Brissett's been more solid recently than Jameis Winston has been.
Jameis just hasn't played because they've had other quarterbacks in front of him. Mm-hmm. But when he has played, he's been okay.
But Brissett in Cleveland was solid. He was with the Cleveland Browns.
But how long? Wasn't it like 3 years ago?
No, it was 2 years ago. Jacoby Brissett in Cleveland? That was in the aftermath of Baker and when waiting for Deshaun Watson to come on back. I'm pretty sure that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, 12 touchdowns, 6 picks. It's all right.
You're just a big stat guy. Like, you just look at the stats and then you're like,
No,
oh, this guy
I know.
sucked.
No,
The
listen, I
feel of the
remember
moment
Brissett.
was
He was fine.
Brissett did a good job for them considering the circumstances.
I remember Brissett. The last time Brissett was like a legitimate
Colts?
starting quarterback was with the Colts in 2019. 3,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 6 picks. You know, that time in Cleveland, he was fine. He came in, he did a fine job, but I mean, he didn't show me anything that I was like, man, like he needs to be a starter somewhere.
But no one is saying, oh, wow, that's the move that I need to go get the guy. But you're giving me out of those names.
Yeah, there's not a lot out there.
You're basically saying I have a pig. What pig are you going to put lipstick on to make them a little bit more attractive and try to sell to my team for this year?
Honestly, with what's remaining, you might as well just go with Michael Penix or J.J. McCarthy or something like that. Because there's nothing that's even really serviceable. Ryan Tannehill?
Ugh. God, no. Ryan Tannehill. Maybe 3 years ago, fine. But the biggest mistake Tennessee made was giving that guy a new contract when they could have maybe got Tom Brady. Remember when Brady was FaceTiming courtside in Syracuse with that big booster and you had Julian Edelman right next to him and they were on the phone with Mike Vrabel? How the heck did Tennessee say, oh, yeah, right before free agency starts, we had to give Ryan Tannehill a 4-year deal?
Do they continue on with Nick Mullins or Jaron Hall?
No. Just, God forbid.
What about Jimmy G after his 2-game suspension?
You know what? We haven't even talked about a landing spot for Jimmy G.
That's a great point.
And O'Connell, right, is friendly with Shanahan. Did they ever work together with the Commanders? Did they work together? I forget, but you want Jimmy G? Yeah, he's serviceable.
Yeah, it's
that dude,
one of those,
that dude's body is made of glass. Maybe that's why he was taking the HGH. He was trying to build up a little extra toughness in that body. Also, I know it was probably for recovery, but Jimmy G has a body where you don't need to be taking any HGH. I've never looked at Jimmy G and said, oh, that guy needs to be stronger.
You know what, though, man? There's like model body and then there's football body. He's got the body that, like, he'll get the ladies, but I don't know if he has the body that will stick up to a 270-pound, linebacker.
So the Bengals, by the way, are signing Geno Stone to a 2-year contract, $15 million deal with a $6 million signing bonus. That's a good signing. Geno Stone made a lot of plays for the Ravens this past year, and the Bengals lost Jesse Bates to the Falcons, who had a very good season. Jesse Bates is a good player. I like that signing of Geno Stone to the Cincinnati Bengals. All righty, Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. Where do you think Justin Fields is ultimately going to land? 855-212 for CBS, 855-212-4227. For me, that's the biggest talking point from now until the NFL draft, where Fields is going to land. 2 other talking points, Derrick Henry, and now also Aaron Jones. And I think one of them will land with the Dallas Cowboys, and the other will land with the Baltimore Ravens. Like, you tell me Derrick Henry's with the Cowboys and Aaron Jones with the Ravens, fine. You tell me Derrick Henry's with the Ravens and Aaron Jones with the Cowboys, fine by me. But I think both those teams need a running back, and both those teams are going to be in for now the big names, the unexpected name of Aaron Jones becoming available with Josh Jacobs off to the Packers, and now Derrick Henry still out there. That's kind of crazy. Where you go through all the running backs that have deals today, whether it was Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, and Derrick Henry, it's only a few hours into the legal tampering window, but we don't have any clarity on where Derrick Henry's going to go. I kind of feel as if Derrick Henry's winding up with the Baltimore Ravens, and then Aaron Jones goes to the Dallas Cowboys. Those will be some of the added predictions that we will give to you with how the way that things are playing on out. All righty, Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. We will take a break. We'll come on back. We'll update you some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. We get to the news brief when we return in 5 minutos.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
Okay, we have some breaking news here. We don't have a lot of details on it, but Sheena Quick, who covers the Carolina Panthers for 1340 AM Fox Sports, and I'm familiar with her work, barring a last-minute complete breakdown in negotiations, Brian Burns will be a New York Giant, per a source, according to Sheena Quick. I'll update after proposed compensation is confirmed. I hate to just continue to punch down on the Carolina Panthers, but I'm going to do so. And I'm going to do so in a very mild manner way right now because I don't know what the compensation is going to be via trade. But it wasn't that long ago that the Carolina Panthers reportedly could have got 2 first-round picks from the Los Angeles Rams when Les Snead was in F those picks mode, and they didn't do that deal. Now, you don't get a long-term deal done with Brian Burns, and I would be very surprised if you are getting 2 first-round picks here. I got to think for Brian Burns, you're getting 1 first-round pick. And hey, if you couldn't get a long-term deal done with the very young, successful pass rusher, you rather get a first-round pick, and it's coming from the Giants, who are not going to be good this year, assuming that you do get a first-round pick. So, okay, that's probably the best that you could do. But when you could have got 2 first-round picks, and then I'm just assuming you're only going to get 1 here, man, it's like another one of those moments where, what are the Panthers doing? And look how much talent they've had. You know, DJ Moore no longer there. Christian McCaffrey no longer there. And now it appears that the Brian Burns era in Carolina is coming to a close. But this got to be full rebuild with Morgan and now Canales. And you just hope that David Tepper stands out of the way. But you're kind of back into this mode with Carolina where year 1, it's a wash. Year 2, you got to improve it. Then year number 3, you got to be a playoff contender. But my ultimate question comes, when do they pull the plug on Bryce Young? And how much time are they going to give Bryce Young? You know, this year, Bryce Young's their starting quarterback. If it looks like last year, you know, how quickly teams move on. I don't think it's crazy to say that Bryce Young is done then entering the 2025 NFL season. But in all likelihood, probably Bryce Young has some redemption this year. And then since he's on a rookie contract, you'll probably see the next 2 years of Bryce Young in, 2024 and 2025. It's not, I know that sounds like Santa, a premature conversation, but you even said it earlier. Look how many times guys go in the first round, a little bit different in your first overall pick, but then they move on from quarterbacks. Like, heck, Baker Mayfield had the Browns in the playoffs, then gets hurt, regresses, and the next thing you know, they give up all this future draft capital and a fully guaranteed contract for Deshaun Watson. And not that I personally know David Tepper, but knowing people that know David Tepper, I don't think David Tepper is going to be one to sit and wait, even though the philosophy of continuously meddling the people that you hire to run things from a football standpoint and having your hand in the cookie jar for a lot of things hasn't worked. Like, maybe you could hold him off or try to hold him off for a few months. But if year number 1 does not look good for the Carolina Panthers, heck, we've seen him fire Frank Reich and didn't even give him a full season. I'm not saying they're going to fire this new regime after 1 year. You can't be firing coaches in back-to-back-to-back seasons. But I don't think Tepper really has a timeline. Tepper's just trying to jump to the front of the line. And we've seen another aggressive owner in sports, right? Steve Cohen with the Mets had that aggressive timeline, and then this kind of feels like it's the retool year. This is the retool season for the Carolina Panthers, and you're probably going to have to tack on an additional season to that. But I think the evaluation of Bryce Young moving forward is going to be a fascinating topic.
And it bothers me when you draft a quarterback that high and you just
have no plan.
And you empty the cupboards around him. Bryce Young may be a very good quarterback. We don't know yet. Mm-hmm. He didn't show to be fantastic his first year, but when you're setting him up for failure, when you're getting rid of all of the talent on offense and defense, you're applying so much pressure on that quarterback's shoulders, and they're very narrow shoulders for Bryce Young, just size-wise. There's no way he can succeed unless he's Superman, unless he's Peyton Manning, unless he's Tom Brady. Patrick Mahomes, which he's not. You have to surround him with talent. So maybe the Brian Burns move is that they're going to get draft assets, open up some of the salaries so they can add offensive draft capital to help out Bryce Young. But so far they haven't been doing that.
Well, here's the other thing too. Now I don't know if they're getting a first round pick back. I'm just assuming. Is that a future first? Because like let's just say they get a first round pick
back.
They
have the 6th pick. They're not giving up the 6th pick for Brian Burns.
Well, that's what I was just going to. Because if you're the Panthers and you could get the 6th pick,
for sure,
then you get a Roma Dunze, You get a Malik Neighbors.
Or Joe Alt for an offensive tackle if you want to help out to protect your quarterback.
Yeah, and they just signed a guard today. So then, okay, I could see that. But I would be surprised, and we don't know what the compensation is. So this is all speculation.
If you're the Giants, you gave up the 6th pick for Brian Burns. Yikes.
Now, Diana Rossini just put this out there. So this is a conflicting kind of report. The Panthers and the Giants have been discussing a trade for Brian Burns for a while, per sources. I'm told at this point it's not complete, but there is hope they can get there. We'll see if it could be finalized. I don't think the Giants could trade the 6th overall pick for Brian Burns, especially when a lot of people, there were reports last week after coming out of the combine from Rich Eisen, or 2 weeks ago, that they're done with Daniel Jones. So you need to keep that 6th pick in striking distance for a quarterback. But then this is probably a future first-round pick. It's probably a 2025 first-round pick. Man, I know you're getting a player like Brian Burns, and I know it's tough to predict the speculation of where that pick's going to be. Like, look, everyone crushed the Texans for trading a future 1 to Arizona to go get Will Anderson Jr., and that pick ended up being in the 20s. But the Giants' 2025 first-round pick, if it is, in fact, going to be that for Brian Burns, that could be a top 3 pick. Heck, that could be the number 1 pick in the draft. The Giants suck. Lost Xavier McKinney. Lost Saquon Barkley. Like, you have Daniel Jones, who may not even be ready week 1, and even if he is, so what? This team stinks. You have Dexter Lawrence. You have Kayvon Thibodeau. Outside, like, you had Brian Burns. You got a good pass rush. You got a good defense. But what are you going to do on the offensive side of the ball? Like, what, are you going to just be the Patriots of last year? Where you only allow 14, but your offense can't even get to 15? So, man, oh, man, I'm curious to see if this deal does get done, what the compensation factor is going to be and what the Giants actually have to give up. All righty, let's update some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. We get to a news brief.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
Then David Bakhtiari has been released by the Packers. He gave his emotional goodbye today. Aaron Rodgers, moments ago, just quote tweeted it and quote tweeted the video with a heart. I don't think you even need sources for this. But I'm going to be very surprised if David Bakhtiari is not back with Aaron Rodgers, a little reunion with the JATS Jets. Let's listen up to Ricky Williams. He was on the Momentum podcast, and he says he could be a better college football coach than Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. All right, let's listen up.
You think you could coach?
Hell yeah.
That'd be sick.
That's a stretch.
You don't like a Deion effect.
Even if a small, it'd be bigger than Deion effect. Even if a smaller school offered me, when I say better than Deion or different than Deion, is because I'm an astrologer. And so when I'm coaching these kids, I'm not just looking at what I see with my eyes. I'm looking at something deeper. And I'll be able to access and tap into deeper levels of motivation and skill development than others, just because I have that added level of clarity.
I'm going to say something that I usually make fun of people for saying things in the way that they do it. I like Ricky Williams. I like when Ricky Williams comes on this show. I don't think Ricky Williams would be a good college football coach. I don't think he'd be a good NFL football coach. Because if you're going to go through this deeper thinking kind of thing and all of that, like eventually a college kid's going to be like, Coach, what the heck are you talking about? And I think the name of Ricky Williams is like, wow, I'm getting coached by Ricky Williams. But then if he's giving you all this like stuff, I don't know how much that's going to be a turn on for a young college athlete. So also on the Momentum podcast, former college quarterback Mo Hassan said the mob offered him money to fix games. Okay, let's listen up.
I was approached at Jason Aldean's bar in Nashville by the Italian mob. What? To fix football games.
I'll be honest, this sounds like a story
like
that
the mafia?
I do not need to be a part of.
I wanted to get drinks, and so I'm alone right now. I'm not with my friend group. He comes up to me. He offered me $300,000.
He offered you $300,000
for a game.
The Italian mob offered you $300K to do what?
Stop saying that.
He said, we regularly talk to guys in your position about fixing games. He said he named guys in the SEC who I don't want to say their names because they're in the NFL right now, and that's a bad look.
Deal?
It's a bad deal. But University of Alabama, I will tell you that.
Holy crap.
He said almost every game in the SEC is rigged.
Too much for me.
You know when you hear former players say things and you're like, just kind of seems like something crazy? Like, I'm not saying that it's impossible for the mob to approach a college kid and offer them money. But why are you approaching that guy? He was at Vanderbilt. He was at USC. His career numbers, 11 completions, 17 attempts, 158 yards, and a touchdown. So if the mob is going to someone to offer them money, that would be to try to impact the game, right? What position was this guy in to impact the game? Like, none. So I don't really... I call BS. As the kids would say, I call cap on this story. I think there's some fabrication, Samter, of this story with Mo.
Well, I think also, you can bet on everything. Over-unders and lines.
This guy wasn't playing, though.
But there's ways that you can impact the game. There are ways. If you're a quarterback and you're not playing, it's a little bit different of a story.
Way, and this is not to disparage anyone around here. You know how Chris Hess was training with us last week? He's not on the show, but he's in the building. That would be like the mob calling up Chris Hess. I want you to sabotage the Zach Gelb Show. And you're not getting any microphone time.
Sure, but
it's a waste.
He could hop in here. He could, pull a plug. He can take your mic off. He could screw up the TriCaster. I'm sure, he can unplug something.
No.
Or trip over something.
No.
Yeah, there's ways to do it.
What do you think? Mo is going to be running onto the sideline. USC was about to score, and he tackles someone in USC?
Listen, the reality is if what he's saying is true, and he was getting offered $250,000 to $300,000 as the backup quarterback for Vanderbilt, then if what he's saying is true and guys at Alabama and other SEC, maybe the starting running back for Alabama or whatever is getting $1 million to throw a game or go for the under or whatever.
You ever, as a kid, play that game Telephone? When you're in a circle and you whisper a word and it goes around the circle and you see if the word's the same once it gets to the person that was right next to the person that started?
Of course.
That's what this game... This feels like it was a game of college football telephone where there was a story where probably there was some initial truth, and then it just gets slowly passed around college football and everyone starts inserting them in the conversation and saying, I got hit up by that guy too. I don't think Mo Hassan has any credibility here. Seriously, what would be the point of hitting him up $300,000? Dude wasn't even playing. Giannis Antetokounmpo on his now teammate, Patrick Beverley.
He's one of those guys that, sorry for my language, that you say, he's an a-hole. But when he plays on your team, you're like, that's my a-hole. And I love him. So, sorry for my language.
He's 100% right. Patrick Beverley is one of those guys where if he's on your team, you love him. But if you have to go up against him, you absolutely hate his guts. Let's go to Kim Mulkey on the fight at the end of the LSU South Carolina game where multiple players on each team got ejected.
It's ugly. It's not good. No one wants to be a part of that. No one wants to see that ugliness. But I can tell you this. I wish she would have pushed Angel Reese. Don't push a kid. You 6'8". Don't push somebody that little. That was uncalled for, in my opinion. Let those two girls that were jawing, let them go at it.
Kim Mulkey scares the living crap out of me. I think out of all coaches, male, female, doesn't matter. If I was in a room with Kim Mulkey, I would be so afraid of Kim Mulkey. I heard a story from some of the people that I know that used to coach at Baylor, that the football coaches would used to play on their basketball court, the women's basketball court, just in the summer, you run a game between the coaches. And Kim Mulkey would come out from her office and start yelling at the coaches, if you guys don't start playing defense, you're getting kicked off the court. Kim Mulkey is a very, very, very scary woman. She intimidates the crap out of me. I would not want to be one of her players and do something wrong. I don't think I'd be able to play for her because I think I would have to transfer out because I just could not take how scary Kim Mulkey is. Here is Dawn Staley, though, on the entire incident with LSU.
I just want to apologize to the basketball community. When you're playing in championship games like this, in our league, things get heated. No bad intentions. They just try, their emotions got so far ahead of them that sometimes these things happen. So I want to apologize for us playing a part in that, because that's not who we are and that's not what we're about.
That that's a big difference from Kim Mulkey to Dawn Staley. Dawn Staley's like, oh, I'm just going to apologize. Kim Mulkey's basically going to say, I wish that this player shoved another player so then we could even have more violence. But at the end of the day, I watched that whole thing. I think there was a lot more outrage than what there needed to be. I didn't really think anything was like so far out of line. The shove was big, but I've seen worse shoves, and it's not as if I need to sit here and then advocate for suspensions. And then finally, Kayla Ard, who was the coach at Utah State, her team loses in their conference tournament, and she announces, which basically just dropped the mic and the press conference, not in a good way, that right before getting up to the podium, she found out that she was fired as the head coach.
How do you plan to rebuild for next season?
I'm not going to be rebuilding. I just coached my last game at Utah State. I spoke with Diana, and they're going in a different direction, and I respect her decision, and I hope they get a really good coach in. I'm assuming that's going to be the last question.
Awkward.
Okay.
Thank you.
All. Thank you, Coach.
Yeah, that's awkward. They couldn't just wait until after the press conference? Like, was that a big pressing story that someone was going to break it until after the press conference? Man, that's really awkward. Alrighty, that's a news brief. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. We'll come on back, and we'll update you on all the mayhem that's been going on throughout the day in the NFL with the legal tampering period underway. Update time first. Here he is, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio.
Sports Flash.
Well, here's some of that mayhem. Try keeping up at your own risk, because Kirk Cousins has a new home, leaving Minnesota for a 4-year deal with the Falcons worth $190 million. Gardner Minshew gives the Raiders some depth, coming to terms on a 2-year deal, while Christian Wilkins was the big winner today, getting a 4-year deal from Las Vegas worth a total of $110 million, over $84 million in guaranteed. Another $100 million contract went to Robert Hunt, the former Dolphins guard, got that total from the Panthers on a 5-year deal. The running backs move quickly. Josh Jacobs out of Las Vegas headed to Green Bay, which is releasing Aaron Jones. DeAndre Swift was the first to sign a 3-year deal with the Bears worth $24 million. Tony Pollard followed, leaving Dallas after 5 years for a 3-year deal worth $24 million with the Titans. And Saquon Barkley is gone from New York, but still in the NFC East, signing a 3-year deal with the Eagles worth a total of $37 million. The Eagles also adding Bryce Huff. The former Jet gets a 3-year, $51 million deal. Jonathan Grenard gets 4 years from the Vikings. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Jim Rome here. Coming up Tuesday in the Jungle, a conversation with newly retired Eagles icon Fletcher Cox. See you Tuesday, 12 noon Eastern and 9 Pacific.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick. From the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. It's time to answer Ask the Pros question of the day, and it's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Will in Pittsburgh says, Zach, what do you think about the Steelers signing Russell Wilson? Will they make the playoffs this year? You can submit a question by tweeting at CBS Sports Radio or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag Ask the Pros. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. It's actually our poll question today, and you could find it, or similar to our poll question today, at Zach Gelb at CBS Sports Radio. And the poll question is very simply this. The Russell Wilson-led Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024 will make the Super Bowl, win the AFC North, be a wild card team, and miss the playoffs. Let me just be abundantly clear here on what I was told. A source told me that Russell Wilson is going to get the QB1 reps, and Russell Wilson will be the week one starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know they may put it out there that there is a competition. I think it's one of those things, and I'll say this in air quotes, that it's a competition, wink, wink, because that's what football is about. But I don't see a way, unless there is an injury, that Kenny Pickett is starting over Russell Wilson come week 1. So it's safe to assume that Russell Wilson's going to be the starting quarterback for the Steelers in 2024, and it comes at a $1.2 million price tag with what he was making from the Denver Broncos. I think the Steelers are going to miss the playoffs. And that's not me saying that I believe the Steelers are going to be a bad team. But I think it's just a logjam of how many teams are on the AFC that are going to be good. So 4 teams automatically make the playoffs out of the 7 from winning their division. The Steelers aren't going to win their division. In all likelihood, that's probably going to be the Cincinnati Bengals, maybe the Baltimore Ravens. So let's just say for starters, the Bills win the AFC East, then the Bengals win the North. Let's go the Texans win the South, and then the Chiefs win the West. So then you got 3 spots left. I think the Ravens are a stronger team than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Dolphins are a stronger team than the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got to remember the Jets are getting Aaron Rodgers back. The Cleveland Browns are on the same level right now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Jaguars, they go get Gabe Davis today to add to their plethora of options and weapons that they have for Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence needs a bounce-back year. Is there a big boost? I think so, with Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers, even with those changes. So the way I look at it is that the Steelers are going to be anywhere in that 9 to 10 win range, and it's all going to come down to tiebreakers. But when you're basically saying this team are the field for 3 spots, I'm going to take the field most of the times. So the way that I would rank this in the poll question, miss the playoffs, be number 1. And I know it'd be a regression because they made the playoffs last year with not as good quarterback play. Then be a wild card team would be 2. Win the AFC North would be 3. And then make the Super Bowl would be 4. And the results of the poll question sort of falls in line with what I was saying, except there was a swap 1 and 2. The majority, 48.7%, say be a wild card team. 41.5% say miss the playoffs. Then 7.2% say win the AFC North. And then 2.5% say make the Super Bowl. So you probably could have just done, will the Steelers be a wild card team or will they miss the playoffs? Stu, what do you think right now? Steelers, Russell Wilson, who improved last year. You couldn't get any worse from where you are. He's going to Pittsburgh. They had no quarterback play there last year with Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett. You got George Pickens. You got Deontay Johnson for now. You got Jalen Warren. You also have Najee Harris. And on defense, you got TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith just for starters on what is a very talented defense that just needs to stay healthy.
I know what you're saying about all the teams in the AFC, which makes it tough because of it being a numbers game. But with as strong of a defense that they have, a great head coach, and now you improve the quarterback situation by, I think, a good amount. Yeah. I don't think Russell Wilson's like a top 5 quarterback anymore. I don't think anyone really thinks that. But I think you put him in a better situation with a great coach and a great defense. I think it's a wild card team.
Yeah, and it's not inconceivable to say they're a wild card team, but it's funny that the conversation is just, will they miss the playoffs or they be a wild card team? And my answer, I fully admit, is not a great answer on saying why they're going to miss the playoffs, but I'm just playing the odds game here. But yeah, you would think you improve the quarterback position. You were 10-7 last year. Tomlin, even when he doesn't have a quarterback, usually finds a way to hover right around 9 or 10 wins and make the playoffs. You would think now with Russ there would be a little bit of an improvement. Maybe they get to 11 wins. But just in that division, it's tough. The Browns over the weekend get Jerry Jeudy, who I don't think Jerry Judy's number 1 wide receiver, but for a 5th and a 6th, that's a good move. And you still have Amari Cooper. You still have Elijah Moore. David Njoku's a solid tight end. You know, the Bengals are getting Joe Burrow back. I still think T. Higgins is going to be there, even though he requested a trade today. And you have Jamar Chase. And the Ravens got Lamar Jackson, who's won 2 MVPs. That is a brutal division. That's the best division in football. It's not even close. Like, there's not a bad team in that division. You look at the AFC East, at least the Patriots stink. You know, the AFC West, they have Kansas City. But, there's other teams you don't feel great about. The Broncos you don't feel great about. The Chargers, all right, let's see what they do. And the Raiders are the Raiders. It's the AFC. It's just the truth. The AFC North right now, like, what's the second best division in football? The AFC North is the best division in football. I then think it turns into a conversation with where the teams are constructed right now, the NFC West or the NFC North. And I'm not going to say it's a North because the Bears are going to be starting a rookie quarterback, and we don't even know the Vikings quarterback is.
I think you have to go with the NFC West because the Cardinals are going to bounce back with Kyler. The Seahawks are always going to kind of be around that 500 level. The Rams, we think, are going to make that big jump, especially with all that young talent they have there. Team. And the Niners are the ninth. I think the West is second, maybe even the AFC West after that. But
the AFC West?
Third after the NFC West.
It's the Chiefs. All those other three teams are gambles right now. I would say the AFC East right now, in terms of from top to bottom, is a better division than the AFC West. They don't have the they don't have the Chiefs.
The Giants are going to be terrible. The Commanders, we don't know.
AFC East.
Oh, AFC East, yeah. Because you have three reasonable teams and one terrible team.
The Dolphins are a playoff team. Yeah. The Jets could be a playoff team. Yeah. And the Bills.
I can see them being the third best behind.
The Bills the last few years have either been the second or third best team in the AFC.
And surprisingly, maybe even the AFC South. Right, because the Texans, we know they're going to be good. The Jaguars were really good before they fell short. Yeah. Right, you got Anthony Richardson back for the Colts. The Titans are going to be a train wreck, but
disaster.
But still.
But no, the best. Stu, what are you laughing about?
The train wreck just made me laugh.
They are a train wreck.
No, you're not wrong. It just made me
laugh. It's like true no, honestly. AFC North, best division in football. And then after that, I would say the NFC West would be the second. So anyway, that's where we conclude the Zach Gelb Show. Falcons fans, congratulations. You already won the NFC South. I'm already saying you won the NFC South.
I'll put money on that with you.
Let's for content, just let that marinate a little bit. Maybe we revisit that in July and we bet some dinner or something like that. Arthur Smith gone. Raheem Morrison. You got Kirk Cousins. Heck, imagine if they had Belichick with bringing in Kirk Cousins. There'd be some buzz, some serious buzz with the Atlanta Falcons. Big thanks, Evan Washburn. Big thanks, each and every one of you. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.